All right, team, we are live. Okay, let's go ahead and call tonight's BPAC meeting to order. Sorry for the tardiness, but there was a meeting right before us and there needed to be a change of the chairs. So we'll call this meeting to order at 5:45 p.m. Ms. Glorioso Mas, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Member Eric Abo,
Here.
Member Angela Bird-Gray, Member Yolanda Eisenstein,
Here.
Member Judith Gabriel,
Here.
Member Tony Gerlix,
Here.
Member Dan Painter, Member Ben Pingelly, he's excused, Member Carl Spencer,
Here.
Member Steve Pilcher, he is attending online.
Here.
Okay. Good to hear you, Member Pilcher. Came from
Good.
Evans.
Chair Michael Garcia,
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next up is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there changes from staff?
None, Mr. Chair.
Any changes from members?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend, I believe that the agenda lists Ben Pingley as the chair of the review committee and it's Dan Painter now. Is that correct?
Looks.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Member Abo, that's correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, the agenda I thought. Okay, it looks like it is corrected. Never mind, then no changes.
It might be corrected online. I don't know. So if it's not correct in the packet, we'll just make sure to make that correction.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. A second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Glorioso Mas, can get a roll call vote, please.
Member Abo,
Yes.
Member Bird-Gray, Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Gerlix,
Yes.
Member Painter, Member Pilcher,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Great. Thank you. Next up, item 5, communications from the public. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address us tonight?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
minutes.
Oh, yes, item 4. Approval of the minutes, November 9th, 2023 minutes. Any changes from staff?
None, Mr. Chair.
Any changes from members? Hearing none, what's the will of the body?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Glorioso Mas, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Member Abo,
Yes.
Member Bird-Gray, Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Member Gerlix,
Yes.
Member Painter,
Yes.
Member Pilcher,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Great. Now we're on to item 5. I was excited to have the public address us. So hopefully somebody will come to address us for 2 minutes. Is there anybody online that would like to address us besides Mr. Pilcher? Do we know, can we see that?
No one online, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Seeing that nobody is rushing to the podium to address the public, we'll go ahead and move on to item 6, communications from other agencies. First up is Santa Fe MPO, Mr. Ani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll be doing our report today. Not a lot to say, except that we are happy to announce that fresh off the press, the Santa Fe Safe Routes to School Action Plan was adopted by our Transportation Policy Board about 45 minutes ago. So that plan will be posted on our website, on the Santa Fe Conservation Trust website. This is ahead of the Santa Fe Public Schools taking over that program since they received federal transportation funds via the Transportation Alternatives Program to continue the program for the next 2 or so years. Also, we are excited to announce that the city has committed $175,000 for street design guidelines, which is a standalone document separate from the code rewrite. Currently, the code includes the street design guidelines in chapter 14, and this will be a separate document that addresses those instead of being embedded in the code. And I think that that is all that we have to share right now, and I'll stand for any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any members with questions? Member Bo.
Mr. Chair, Hannah, and so what is the timeline for the street design work? And what do you think the input process is anticipated for that? Do you know, or is it just brand new?
It is brand new. I know that we will have to go to RFP first, which will take months. And then probably based off of the proposals that we receive in that process, we'll have a better idea of what public input could look like in that timeline. But I would guess at the earliest a year and a half. I got a nod.
Thank you so much.
Leah, do you know who the Santa Fe Public Schools coordinator is?
Yeah, that's Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that's a great question. So Santa Fe Public Schools will be posting a position for that, or to hire that position. They were hopeful at the earliest this Friday, well, tomorrow, but they weren't confident that that would happen because a number of things have to fall in place, and tomorrow's the last day of school. So at the earliest tomorrow, if not, it sounds like it would be posted in January. It's being administered through the school sustainability department. So the current sustainability chair or director, Lucy Stannis, has been engaged around this so far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gerlitz. Any other members with questions? Okay, well, thank you for the presentation and the updates. Really appreciate it. Next up, Bike Santa Fe, Ms. Weber. Oh, you got a proxy tonight. Okay.
Indeed. I don't think most of you haven't met me yet. My name is Dan Young. I'm a board member with Bike Santa Fe, reporting on our activities for last month. So in the past month, Bike Santa Fe has begun recruiting members for our committees. These include things like our advocacy committee, our events planning committee, there's others. Anybody can join these committees. They don't even have to be a member of Bike Santa Fe. That would be great if you were. For more information, you can visit our website and email us for more information on committees. We've also submitted comments on the initial land use update code updates, mostly in support of more measures for bicycle infrastructure updates. We've also been fielding comments from our members regarding current infrastructure and road and trail safety issues in Santa Fe that are not currently being addressed by the city. An example, one member submitted tickets to the city in September and October through the CRM system about vegetation blocking the bike and pedestrian paths at the Siler and Alameda traffic circle that's adjacent to the terminus of the rail trail. To date, nothing has been done about this yet. Our concern is that if this were a road, this would be something to be addressed immediately. In this case, it's been quite a amount of time that it hasn't been addressed. We're going to request a meeting with Regina Wheeler, the Department of Public Works Director, to discuss this and other issues concerning Bike Santa Fe. Lastly, we do look forward to the traffic engineer's presentation. We're particularly interested in hearing about any plans to add crosswalk markings to important and currently dangerous bicycle route intersections. Some specific intersections that were brought up in a meeting include the rail trail crossings at St. Michael's and Siringo, the river trail crossing at DeFori, the intersection of Potencia Street and Baca. Additionally, Bike Santa Fe has been discussing traffic light timing that favors the convenience of cars above any other mode of transportation. There are many traffic light intersections in Santa Fe where the light will only turn green if there's a car waiting. For example, at Guadalupe and Don Diego at Cerrillos. In these cases, cyclists have to get onto the sidewalk to press the pedestrian crossing button. It if a cyclist did not get the light right, as it should be turning green. But it doesn't because there's no car rating, they have to sit through no cycle traffic. It's inconvenient to the cyclist and makes for quite the impediment when traveling across town. Additionally, if a car pulls up behind the cyclist who is waiting at a red light but doesn't pull forward enough, the car is not sensed and the light doesn't change for either the cyclist or the car in that case. So both users get inconvenienced. This issue is at best an inconvenience and at worst is a safety issue for cyclists if the car drivers get frustrated enough such that the light didn't change for them. So if city is not able to install sensors or radars or lights to detect bikes, and lights need to change every single time, is what we want to say. We'd love to hear more thoughts about this issue. We know it's going to be addressed during the presentation. Any questions from the members?
All right, any members got any questions?
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the update. Next up, the City Public Safety Committee, Member Spencer.
The committee did not meet last month, so there's no report on any activity there. What I will do is editorialize a bit. Is that me? The Public Safety Committee, at least for the time I've been on it, which is well over a year now, has been a little bit light on ability to affect policy at the city level. It seems where the real power is a public safety task force, and I may not be getting the name right. So it may be in the interest of our committee chair and this committee to look into what the relationship should be between those two committees and whether there is any possibility that we could put a member on the task force, which is, as we saw recently, there was an article in the paper that it made quite a few recommendations to the city regarding public safety. So that seems to be where policy is actually being made and where rubber hits the road. So that's it.
Any questions for members? Just, I guess, a little follow-up. So the Health and Safety Task Force
That's
actually completed their work recently, as you mentioned, with all the recommendations. So a lot of that work will be flowing down to committees such as the Public Safety Task Force. So there will be a lot of work on that plate. I mean, they gave the governing body a ton of recommendations for us to begin to move on. So I would not be surprised if that committee begins to see some traction. We will have a new chair on that committee, given that the current chair, Councilor Rivera, is, he will be finishing up his term now in December, and we don't have the new person appointed yet. We're working on that right now. So hopefully when is your next meeting?
next week.
Next Tuesday. So
Yes.
yeah, maybe bring that up at the meeting just to see what the committee's thoughts are on the recommendations and begin to develop some action plans, and then let us know on our committee how we might be able to support that work.
Yeah, and the other thing is, since I'm the liaison from this committee and I'm term limited off at the end of whatever this cycle is, we should think about who wants to take over as being liaison yet. I don't know if I'm eligible to stay on that committee as a member of that committee or would have to be appointed, but when I turn into a pumpkin here, someone should take over the position I have right now.
Okay. And so Ms. Gloriosa Moss will get the time frame of when we'll need to have somebody hand the baton off for that committee.
Member Spencer is retiring June 30, 2024. That is his third term, finishing his third term.
Thank you.
We got 6 months. Call. Okay, any other
I
questions?
must endure.
Any other questions or comments for Member Spencer's report? Okay, hearing none, let's go to move on to Section 7, discussion and possible action items. First up is discussion with Mayor's Committee on Disability. We've got, thankfully, we've got Co-Chair Kathleen Gish, and we also have other guests with us, Mr. Eli Fresco. So how about we do this? I'm going to hand it off to Member Eisenstein because this is your item. We've asked some guests to come for us. First, I want to make sure you can be accommodated and sit up front. Do we need to set up some chairs? Okay. And then I'll hand it off to you, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. And thank you so much for coming out on this wintry night in Santa Fe. So we had a discussion at our last meeting about adding a person with disability to our committee. And we wanted to explore that a bit more before we made any decisions in terms of how this would happen. Would this be someone that would be appointed by you? Would it be someone who actually had a disability or someone who is in the community or works with people who have disabilities? So I think what we'd like to do is hear from you in terms of your thoughts, how we could best accommodate an additional person on our committee, or whether you would rather see us have a liaison or report as needed. So I think this is just kind of an exploration right now and how we can work together going forward. So I will hand it off to you. Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Gish, and I am the chair of the Mayor's Committee on Disability. And Councilor Garcia approached us with this, and everything that I have heard so far sounds really, really good to open up this opportunity. I just want to go over real quick, though, what the Mayor's Committee on Disability does, because I think that it's important. So in short, we advise the city on all aspects of disability needs. It can be ADA compliance, access needs, barriers that disabled people and also seniors experience in all areas. So housing, transportation, recreation, employment, human rights. We do meet monthly. We have 9 members, and we work to address needs of people with and without disabilities. So it's not just exclusively disability, but everything that we do can impact the entire community. We, according to our bylaws and resolution, we study issues of disability in regard to city programs. And we advise the governing body of city programs providing services to people with disabilities. We also make recommendations on preliminary plans, both long and short range plans. And we review and comment on preliminary plans of any new building repair over 25,000, any new park or facility or improvements to a park or facility costing over 25,000, and any new pedestrian structure over 10,000. But I can say that hasn't happened in years. And we also do community outreach and education and staff training regarding issues of disabilities. And our resolution says that we shall cooperate. I wish the word was collaborate, but we shall cooperate with other city boards and committees. And so to me, that this is exactly what our resolution says to do, that we are supposed to be collaborating with other boards and committees. So I know that Eli, you want to?
I was going to say, Ms. Gish, if we
Yeah.
can introduce the other
Yeah.
guests as well.
So this is Eli Fresquez, and this is Daniel Lopez, who is the new office, the Equity and ADA Manager.
For the city of Santa Fe.
For the city of Santa Fe, yes.
And Eli, just make sure it's turned green.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, so my name is Eli Frescas. Thank you so much for having me today, Councilor Garcia and BPAC. Just to highlight too, the creation of a lot of these initiatives really comes from the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was in 1990, right? So that was 30 some odd years ago. And then shortly after the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, the Department of Justice created a program called Civic Access. And what they did was they went out to state and local governments to look for compliance issues. One of the first cities they came to was Santa Fe, and they did an investigation and ultimately came up with a Department of Justice, Federal Department of Justice settlement with the city. And that really lifted up the creation of the Mayor's Committee on Disability, and it also established the creation of an ADA coordinator, which were already required under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But that settlement was entered into in 2001. So quite a while ago, but the work still continues. But just to highlight that the Mayor's Committee on Disability really does bring that compliance feature up and lifts up those obligations we have under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's not to be a checklist. It's really about empowering and investing in the city and using the law as a way of not just enforcement, but for inclusion and investment in the best interests of everyone here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. In addition to that, I do want to say that the Mayor's Committee has already been collaborating with BPAC on the resolution for maintenance and installation but for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And my committee, the Mayor's Committee on Disability, has reviewed that resolution, and we have made recommendations, which we gave this afternoon to Regina Wheeler directly, to include in that resolution to make it more inclusive of disability, because there was nothing explicit within that resolution. And so included, or you should have received, if not, you will receive a letter that the Mayor's Committee on Disability wrote in support of that resolution. And it highlights numerous aspects that, you know, even though your resolution does not explicitly state that it is inclusive of people with disabilities, it absolutely is. And so, you know, starting this conversation, you know, whether you have a person with disabilities on your committee as a voting member, or whether we have a liaison from the Mayor's Committee joining your meetings, you know, whether you come to us with your resolutions going forward so that we review them to see if disability can be explicitly included. All of this is excellent discussion and needs to happen. And so, you know, I just wanted to say though that we are already collaborating, you know, and so to me, this is exactly what needs to happen. You know, not just with this committee. I'm grateful that you are really the first to start this kind of collaboration because it is essential for people with disabilities to be included in all areas of the city. But also just to have an ongoing collaboration and working relationship with everything going forward, your resolutions, your, you know, resolutions for your own committee. And so, yes, we are absolutely open to this discussion. And I have let Chair Garcia know that we as the Mayor's Committee would love to have members of the BPAC join our meeting in February, on February 7th from 3 to 5, if that's possible for you. We are on Zoom, and so it should be accessible. If it's not, please let me know and I will do everything to accommodate you. But this is how I view, you know, our committee is already required to do this kind of work. And this is literally what we have been trying to do with the city, is having these discussions. So I think that is really the next step, is bringing this to the Mayor's Committee and hearing from our members what their thoughts are, and if someone is interested, however it happens, you know, like I said, if they're a voting member or if they're a liaison. And I think that that is sincerely the next step, but I am all in support of this. And I am grateful that this is happening. So thank you.
Okay, so I think I heard you wanted to take this to your committee and discuss it, okay, which I certainly agree with and think that's an excellent idea. And there are obviously several ways we can do this. We can have more of what we're doing right now in terms of going to each other's meetings and collaborating and having a discussion. I think my tendency, and I'll open it up after, you know, I made my comments, is I'm probably less inclined to change our resolution and, you know, structure it so it's very specific at this point. I think I would prefer us to see sort of an exploration. I would be happy if my schedule's open to attend your meeting on Zoom and, you know, sort of come up with some ideas of how we can best work together, rather than just change the resolution and say we're going to have, you know, a member with disabilities So that would be my tendency at this point, is to move forward sort of as we're going now. But with that, I'll open it up to the other committee members and see what their thoughts are.
Since time. Member Gabriel.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm very excited about this collaboration. One of the things that I'm thinking about, and I don't know what your structure is or if you have subcommittees, we have 3 subcommittees. One is technical review, and people review plans. And I think participation in that could be very helpful. We also have programming, education, and promotion, as well as policy. And I feel like, so we have members at large that are not part of the BPAC participating on the subcommittees. And I think that is a potential way for us. That's where a lot of the work gets done in between. So I feel like that has some potential there.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Gabriel. Member Painter, sorry. Yes, yes. Sorry, filters online.
All right, thanks. I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned there was a person or position, ADA coordinator or something along that line. Has that position been filled, or it has? Is there any, that's you? Is there any value in that person representing the disability community on this committee, or?
Yes, my name is Daniel Lopez, Equity and ADA Manager.
Huh?
Well, to that question, I would recommend that we utilize the Mayor's Committee as a representation of the community of people with disabilities, so that we don't just get one individual voice, one individual disability, that we get a consolidation of concerns being addressed from the committee, because they can reach out to that community much faster, much quicker, and also have a better understanding of the issues that affect people with disabilities. I could be assistance to that. I'm more than willing to come to any meeting that you require me to be there to help with any technical questions, and I'm open to doing that. But I strongly recommend a collaborative effort with all committees that the city has, and so that's the direction I'm recommending for all committees. So in this committee, if you have concerns with changing your resolution, if you do a change, I would recommend, and this is a recommendation, they may have a different opinion, and I want you to listen to their opinions also. But my recommendation would be that we open it up to a representative person from the committee, so that if someone on the committee comes, it could be whoever is available from that committee and has an understanding of the issue that's going to be addressed at your meeting. So that way we always have someone present and we don't have an issue of attendance.
Mr. Chair, Member Painter, if I may. He's also an employee of the city of Santa Fe, so he cannot represent. This is a citizen advisory committee, and one point in time, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a land use planner who wants to be a member of the advisory committee. And I asked the city clerk if he can do that, because he can join the meeting at 5:30. But I was told no employee can be a member or represent or be a member of subcommittee or member of PPAC, because they are employees. Thank you.
I just follow up. Would it be of value that the person was not a member of this committee, but attended our committee meetings and then reported back and did the liaison between the disability committee and our committee, basically? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there since there's a person sort of seemingly in the right position already.
When I asked that question from the city clerk, the problem is the hours that they are going to work, because this is a volunteer group. So would his participation or be volunteer or not. That's the gray area, so that the city of Santa Fe, city clerk at that time said no.
Yeah, I like Member Eisenstein's idea of keeping it fluid, and look forward to hearing from the Disability Committee on how that would work or what your recommendations are. But it would be good, it seems for starters, that we share each other's minutes or agendas. Maybe it is a good idea to be flexible on who goes to each other's meetings. If it's a policy issue that we're looking at, somebody from the policy committee. If it's a technical review of an ADA compliant structure or project, someone from our technical review committee. So if it's not against any particular rules for how we liaison back and forth, probably a good idea to keep it pretty flexible while we work out what works best for our common goals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that, after looking at this, maintenance and installation of bicycle and pedestrians facility resolution, it resolves so many of our priorities that we have been trying to resolve for years. And so, it was very obvious to me as soon as I saw it, how this would impact physical access and the ability for people to participate in our community equally, even though that was never acknowledged, directly. And so I think that, an ongoing, like I said, an ongoing collaboration would be fantastic, because I think that we do have numerous same goals. And even though it's not, you don't have a specific disability committee, we are aligned, very much. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, one thing that popped into my head is maybe the next step is we have a strategic plan. And I think Ramella and I drafted the basics of it, and it's been approved by the committee. But I think since the year end is here, and my suggestion later on is that we have to revisit the strategic plan. Maybe this is a good starting point for us to collaborate and share our strategic plan with you, and let's work in how we can work together, some goals and strategies and tactics that we need to consider as we go forward next year, that includes people with disabilities and the people that you work with. So I think that might be a good starting point for us to sort of structure the relationship going forward and how we can work together.
Any other comments or questions from members? I like some of the ideas proposed, but I definitely don't want to lose sight of potentially updating our resolution to ensure that there is representation on BPAC. I always look at the sustainability issue. As we were mentioning, Cal's leaving in June. At some point, we're all going to leave this committee, and I want to ensure that that structure's in place for collaboration is always there. That way, when Chair Gish is gone, they know that there is this relationship with BPAC as well. Same with Chair Fresquez as well as Mr. Lopez. We know that this is a committee. These are two committees that are going to work collaboratively together. And so I agree. Let's begin to develop the relationship, but let's also continue to plant the seed of how we can ultimately work to update our resolution. And it will, I would defer to get the guidance from you and your team in regards to how that individual is identified. Whether it comes from the committee. I mean, as we've got call on the Public Safety Committee, we as the committee selected him to go. That could be a structure. Another structure is your committee could take applications from the public. Another is you can work with Mr. Lopez, and Mr. Lopez can make a recommendation. I think there's endless opportunity. So I think let's explore that and figure out how we can ensure that the opportunity doesn't end once our terms end, that it's continual, and the collaboration that we're initiating now doesn't stop. I mean, and that's something, at least while I'm chair, I'll be committed to, as we work on legislation that's going to get proposed up for introduction. We'll make sure your committee gets to review it as well.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, like I said, in our resolution, it does say that we need to be working with other boards and committees. And so, you know, to me, this is fulfilling our requirements. And so I'm very much open to this. And, you know, I'm a kind of person that I want everyone on my committee to be able to give their thoughts and ideas and really work collaboratively with you all to achieve what you are looking for, but also to support the work that we do. And so, you know, it needs to really be collaborative. So I can be the one to open the door and say, absolutely, yes, let's have these discussions. But it really needs to be like a committee decision. But I don't see anything where I would absolutely say no to. And so, you know, to me, the floor is open, you know, for all of this to happen. And it is actually a very positive move forward for the city. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think it's evident with the letter of support you've provided for the legislation that the committee ultimately worked to draft for recommendation of introduction. And so just thank you for the time, energy, and effort that your committee already has put into this process.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? Any final comments from Ms. Gish, Mr. Fresquez, Mr. Lopez?
No, I just wanted to thank all of you and for starting this process. It is something that I feel needs to happen. And the city, you know, is starting to move forward on disability inclusion in a way that has never happened before. And I think this is part of that process. And I think that it's a very positive move forward. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come.
Yes, thank you very much. And I will circle back with Romella to hook us up on the next meeting that you have and the strategic plan, and we'll talk and go from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next item, 7B, which is discussion on technical review subcommittee's proposed amendments to resolution 2018-772. Member Eisenstein, this item's yours, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. So I did a deep dive into this resolution and I have a number of questions. My first question would be to you, Chair Garcia, because I'm not really sure how this works. In looking at the resolution, 2 out of the 3 provisions here are really moot. I mean, the resolution says as soon as practicable, but in no less than 1 calendar year from the date of the adoption of the resolution, which I think was 2018 maybe. And so we have 2 out of the 3 provisions which are problematic. And do we do another resolution, or how do we handle, you know, updating this? Can this be updated? Or do we just need to forget this resolution and do a new resolution that has all the proper timeframes in it and meets the committee wants to do? So that would be my first question.
My initial thoughts are to update the existing resolution. That way we're showing we're building off what was already proposed and approved by the governing body and making the appropriate adjustments and corrections. And that way it has that history legislatively, but it also shows where we want to move with any potential changes. So.
Okay. So just briefly, when I went through the resolution, the first 2 parts of the preamble were a little confusing to me. And so I was hoping maybe someone could sort of explain it. The first one says under in MSA, and it has the list, it says this, the Uniform Traffic Ordinance. It said the third line, subject to limitations that are unrelated to the use of the full lane. Therefore, people on bicycles may use the full vehicle travel lane. I'm not sure what that means.
I think from my interpretation, it's saying that, bicyclists have the ability to use the full lane, just like a car does. According to this portion of the traffic ordinance.
But that's
For
not,
for
reality,
any
is
road
it?
in Santa Fe?
That's my quick reading and interpretation of it.
When I read down Cerrillos, right down the middle there.
I definitely understand the concern, Member Gerlitz, but I think that's the way it's written. And
Well-
I have no, I'm just going off the language. I have no context around why,
right,
the
and,
intention.
but the second whereas sort of contradicts that because it says that a bicycle may use full lane in a number of circumstances that the person riding must personally assess. That doesn't really track with 66.3705, which I have a copy of. So those two sentences confused me a bit, and I wasn't sure how to address that. The
Chair.
other comments that I had is line 11. We have two studies. One was in 2010, one was in 2015. We probably want to update that or see if there's any new research studies out. I did a brief search. There are actually some reports out now from traffic departments and nationwide organizations that might be more relevant for us to include. On line 17, it says at least 13 other states. I'm fairly certain that that is no longer correct. Then on the final page, page 3, the language that says, the new language that we've proposed, it says, whereas Shero road markings are confusing to many drivers and bicyclists, have not been proven to improve bicycle safety and require significant ongoing maintenance. My comment there is not to include require significant ongoing maintenance, because if there's something that we want to approve, and it requires significant ongoing maintenance, we might want to have the maintenance and approve it. And I think we box ourselves in if we include this in the resolution. Yeah. And then the first provision where we say cease the use of share the road signs and sharrows and adopt the use of bicycles may use. My question is, do we know what the status of the original provision is? I'm not sure how we can find out. I mean, originally it said cease the use of share the road signs. Have we stopped doing that? Are there still signs there? I'm not sure how we would draft the resolution to update that.
Mr. Member Eisenstein, as far as I am aware of, the traffic operations section is replacing all share the road sign with the like may use full lane with BMUFL. They're implementing that resolution.
Okay, so we would basically just keep this as it is.
Yes, so
I have a question.
Sure. Member Gabriel.
So it's my understanding that share the road signs are not the same as bikes may use full lane. So I think on Yucca, in my neighborhood, there's a share the road sign, but there's a bike lane. And I don't believe it's one of the places where bikes may use full lane. So I just want clarification because that's a little confusing to me.
I agree. And I think there's a lot in here that needs to be clarified. So, and I think first step would be to develop our laundry list of what we need to work with staff to get clarified. And then, you know, I definitely understand the updating some of the data. We can absolutely work to do that. But yeah, I think that would be a good starting point for us in regards to the clarification needed as we work to potentially amend this resolution. Yes, Member Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yolanda, I want to check with you about the first thing you mentioned, which is on the first page, line 16, which says people on bicycles have the same rights as vehicle drivers, subject to limitations that are unrelated to use of the full lane. That what you didn't get what that means? Because I don't get what that means.
No, I understood that because they've referenced section 66.3.702. And if you look at that, there's nothing in there about bikes using full lanes. So that made sense to me. But what I didn't understand is therefore people on bicycles may use the full vehicle travel lane. I don't think that's correct.
Because it's too broad.
Well, it says basically that bicycles may use the full lane anywhere in the city, and I don't think that's correct. Why would we need a bikes may use full lane sign if that's already written into the code? Yes, can you explain that?
Mr. Chair, committee members, because car drivers don't know that bikes may use full lane is why we need signs that say bikes may use full lane. The issue that you encounter with sharrows on the road is that many drivers think when there are sharrows that is where bikes have to be, when bikes may use the full lane. Even when there are bike lanes, if those bike lanes are along parking, I don't use those bike lanes because I've been doored. And once you've been doored, you don't ride in a bike lane that is next to cars. You use the full lane, which I don't see why that would be limited, because, you know, roads are for moving people, not just cars, whether they're on bikes. So bikes get to use the full lane.
Right, but there is I think this is the traffic, oh no, this is the motor vehicles. It says that a bicycle shall ride as near to the right side of the road as practicable. So that introduces more confusion.
And when there's cars parked, it's not practicable to be hit by a door.
Right.
On your bike. And when the bike lane is not cleared, when the bike lane is full of slush and snow, it's not practicable to ride in the bike lane. When it is branches of trees are coming down and blocking the bike lane, so you hit your head when you're on your bike in the bike lane, it's not practicable. So I think that most cyclists know that, and we think about our safety and, you know, our goal and our hope, as Dan mentioned in his report, is that the city thinks of bike lanes and trails and their usage like it does cars. If a tree fell down in the middle of a road and blocking cars, the city would be out there in a hot minute to clear it. It doesn't treat bike lanes and trails the same way, and our goal is to do that moving forward. But that is why bikes need to be able to have the use of the full lane, is because that infrastructure and maintenance for cyclists just isn't happening and doesn't exist.
Right, and I understand and agree. I just think this is ambiguous the way this is drafted.
Right, I would agree, and we would support making it much more clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Member Spencer.
So it goes to that's 66.3.705, and this whole ambiguity as far as where bicycles could ride. I know in Los Alamos, we explicitly added something to the county traffic code that called out substandard width lanes, because there was that same question of when can a bicyclist take the whole lane? And 66.3.705 uses that word as far to the right as is practicable, which is pretty much the law in most places. Tim Rogers can throw something at me or add something, but that's where it leaves it to the discretion of the bicyclist. If the lane is too narrow to be passed within the lane, then the bicycles can take the lane. That's often not written explicitly, and it isn't in state law. I don't know if it's anywhere else in city code. I don't have a copy of it. But that might be one thing that we can make more clear. I mean, if you have a 13-foot lane, that's all clear. Is different from having a 10 or 11-foot lane, because especially if you have a 5-foot passing rule or a 3-foot passing law, you can just simply take out a tape measure and look at the relative position of a bicyclist, that gap, and a motor vehicle. So what often is the problem is motorists don't recognize that. Sometimes the police don't even recognize that. I've been called on it. I'm belligerent enough, I can usually quote chapter and verse, but that is one thing that maybe we want to make clearer if it's appropriate. Chair's permission, maybe Tim can chime in as a former state bicycle coordinator. How do we make that section 63705 clearer? The R411 bicycles may use full lane makes perfect sense in a lot of our streets, maybe all of our streets, because this is situationally dependent. But how do we make that clearer to bicyclists and motorists and law enforcement? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, and Tim, feel free, and then I would.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm not sure I can resolve that completely, but I did want to point out that we did have an advocate 5 or 6 years ago, Brian Kreimendall, who wanted to replace all share the road signs with bikes may use full lane signs. And I think Judith correctly pointed out that we do have some share the road signs where there are bike lanes. And it's not appropriate to put bikes may use full lane where you have a bike lane. It's actually in the guidance for the signage. I believe it's in the manual of uniform traffic control devices. Brian, who I believe is a lawyer, pointed out bikes can use the full lane. So let's put up the sign. He's right. You can use the lane even when you have a bike lane. If you have a reason to move over, you can use the full lane. But the purpose of the signage is different. And it's the guidance for the signage points out that it's inappropriate to say bikes may use full lane where you have a bike lane, because it's just not where it's appropriate to point that out. You know, really where it's appropriate is where suddenly the bicyclist must use the full lane. And where I've seen it most effective in other communities is where a bike lane discontinues, then you have a sharrow and a sign bikes may use full lane.
I was able to find our city ordinance that is cited here. Happy to read it for folks that might help give a little more clarification. So this is broken up into 2 sections. Part A says operators of bicycles have the same rights as operators of motor vehicles in the use of streets, highways, and roadways within the city, except as otherwise specifically provided herein. And Part B states, every person riding a bicycle upon a roadway, street, or highway shall be subject to all the duties applicable to the drivers of motor vehicles, except as otherwise expressly provided in this traffic ordinance, and except as those provisions of laws and ordinances which by their nature can have no application, and each such person shall be subject to the same provisions and sections of this traffic ordinance to which a motorist is subject within sections, and it cites more code. So, Mr. Ani, can you help us get out of this tangled mess?
Yeah, for the record, Eric Ani with the Santa Fe MPO. So it was December 12th, 2018, when the city council adopted this resolution. So happy anniversary. Brian Krimmendall and his wife, Catherine Bard, both attorneys, went to task to draft this language. I assisted them. They helped work with me. I remember the nuances and the complications. So I wouldn't offer that I can submit all the answers, but maybe for further consideration, I would be happy to sit down with you or any of you and then really articulate what happened in 2018 and what happened after 2018. There was celebration after 2018 when then traffic engineer John Romero really strove to fulfill the obligations. And I appreciate what he did. So if there are still signs out there that say share the road, it's because we do not have, the city does not have a vast database network of every sign. And sure, there will be leftovers, but the intent was there. So I would just offer to sit down and help craft some new.
I think that's a great idea. I think that would be the place to start. Since you were there and know the resolution, yeah, let's plan to talk about the provisions and how to go forward, because the problem is we're talking about the vagaries and problems with the uniform traffic code, but that's not what this resolution is about. The resolution is about the signage. So we need to sort of get away from that and just use the code however it needs to be incorporated in the resolution and focus on how we want to handle the signage aspect of it.
And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, about the same time or shortly thereafter, there was an initiative on a statewide basis, which this group was also involved to advance policy legislation statewide for bikes must be given 5 feet. Maybe some of you were there. And as a result, and I think Mr. Rogers was party to the nuances of bike must be given 5 feet by drivers, there became complications and it didn't go follow through. Some of those complications are articulated in this resolution here. So I can help. It is interesting.
Then member, as it sounded, then go to member Gerlitz.
Yeah, thanks for that, Eric. My question is, if the city of Santa Fe does not have an accurate database of where all the signs are, how do we know? Who knows what's out there? Who knows what needs to be corrected or paid attention to?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my observation in working with city staff over the years is there's been efforts to do this. At some point, previous staff in the 2014, 2015 under Public Works had a spreadsheet of roads that had as much information at the time that was available. This did not include signage. So today, the MPO is still working with, and technology has improved to a point where artificial intelligence using photographs actually can deliver this data. So my colleagues with the MPO are sitting down with the city. Good news, there's some federal funding to actually do this. We'll see how it plays out. But the short answer is it's really without the technology, it would take somebody really going out in the field and, doing a survey. And
Thank you for that. But do I hear you say that it's in the works?
There is an effort, yes, to use new technology to do much more than just articulate a database for signage, street width, lanes, paint, all of the good stuff, so that the city has a baseline of solid data, which then we can do and work with them to do some analysis on what needs to be improved, what are some maintenance issues that can be considered, and a lot of other things. So fingers crossed that we can make this happen.
Thank you.
Any other member Eisenstein?
No, I just think the next step would be for Mr. Ani and I to discuss the resolution. And I think the two of us can come up with a list of questions that we need answered before we can move forward with drafting a resolution or actually updating this one. So that would be my final thoughts on it.
I would only suggest that you almost go beyond the resolution. I'd look at every place in the code, in the city laws, whatever, that talks about bicycles, that go through and do a cursory review of all of that to be sure that they jive. You don't have this, some of the things we brought up tonight that says you can do one thing, but somewhere else it says you can't do that. You got to do something a different way. And if we're going to go through and do it, it'd be nice to get it kind of cleaned up at one time. And it might mean changing some of the ordinances and maybe some of the laws if we can, as far as what treat bicycles. The other thing I was going to mention real fast, I take it the city does not have a method for putting tags on every sign in the city. I know that everybody would say, oh, that's ridiculous. I guarantee you, their city is much bigger than us that have done it. And it helps their public works group keep track of what signs are out there, what needs to be replaced when one's missing, what needs to be replaced when one loses its reflectivity. And so it just, if you had that, then you could go through it to say, show me all the signs that say bicycles can use full, and they would show you everywhere it's at. It's a GIS project, but something to keep in the back pocket someday when there's extra few $1 million laying around. But it would be helpful, believe it or not. I've worked places that had it, and it becomes a lot easier every time you want to change something or find out where all the signs are that deal with this. Painter.
Any other comments?
One more for the record. This came up at previous meetings. Ramella brought it to Public Works Director Regina Wheeler. I was in the room, and I think what I heard accurately was he agreed with the Sharrow issue. He has given direction to Public Works. Sharrows will no longer be replaced and be part of the inventory. And I think that was a clear statement that may help inform this conversation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arani. Any last discussion on this item? Okay, so there are more work to be had on this one. Next item is 7C, appointment of an alternate to member Erica Bowe to the Santa Fe County's Transportation Safety Committee to attend, vote, and make recommendations in member of Bowe's absence. Ms. Glorioso Mas.
Mr. Chair,
yours.
there's no volunteer. There's no one who emailed me and they want to be the alternate.
Okay, I guess I can do a call. Would there any of the members like to be the alternate for member of Bowe should he hit the lottery and need an alternate to represent us at the Transportation Safety Committee meetings?
Mr. Chair, if I could, just give a little context. I don't want to volunteer to be an alternate myself, but I just want to give folks a little bit of context. As we discussed when I was appointed, this committee will meet quarterly in an online forum. And I believe the county is really looking for someone to review the work of the Transportation Advisory Committee that I think Dan sits on, so that my understanding is to just verify independently that the recommendations that the TAC makes are safety compliant in some way. I understand the obligation is intended to be a quarterly online meeting, and I intend to attend. And so I'm not really sure why they haven't had this committee, and they're really pushing us to get an alternate. So I would urge my fellow BPAC members to consider being an alternate to me, because I intend to attend most meetings, but I'm not really sure why they need it. That's my pitch. Thank you.
Thank you, member Bowe. Member Bordigary.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, I'm eliminated from the pool as a Santa Fe County employee. Just put that on the record.
Okay. Member Gabriel.
Does this allow for an ad hoc alternate? So in other words, if you know you're going to miss one of the meetings, that you could ask who might be available to do it, since nobody is volunteering to be a specified alternate?
Mr. Chair, Judith, if we fail to appoint an alternate, I will recommend that to the staff liaison to the TAC, that what if we just have a pinch hitter to be determined at the event, and we can call for volunteers for a specific meeting without being, so if that is the will of the committee, that we have such a structure in place that instead and maybe we can just do it now. We can offer to the county that if I am unable to attend a specific meeting, I will ask Ramella to send out a call to everyone except for Angela, of course, and Dan, who are exempted for different reasons. But if we could do that, I think that'd be a great way. They get to say, oh, good, there's an alternate. We don't know their name, but there's an alternate, at least in theory. I think that might satisfy things, and that's a wonderful idea, Judith. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Can I move that that the committee vote that we make that happen? That we I move that the committee votes to suggest an ad hoc meeting by meeting member be requested whenever I'm unable to attend.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Member Spencer, seconded. Okay, seeing none. Ms. Glorioso Mas, can we get a roll call vote on that motion, please?
Member Abo,
Yes.
Member Board Gray, Member Eisenstein,
Yes.
Member Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Gerlix,
Yes.
Member Painter,
Yes.
Member Pilcher,
Yes.
Member Spencer,
Yes.
Chair Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. And I guess just let us know if they're not okay with that recommendation we're sending you with.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Member Spencer.
On that. Eric, does the person who is your alternate have to be a member of this committee, or could be a subcommittee member? Or did we ever know? Did we find out about that?
I don't know. I didn't form the motion that way, but
Well, just
but let's give it, yeah, let's give it a whack and
if so, maybe we could in the future open it up to subcommittee members, or just to see if we have a bigger pool that way.
excellent idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Spencer.
Thank you. There you go. To practice up on my math.
Okay, next up is item 7D, Q&A with City Traffic Engineer Janine Wolfenbarger and Streets Project Administrator Mark Brooks on street pavement rehabilitation and restriping projects. Member Spencer, this is your item.
Okay, thank you. This wasn't meant to be a huge discussion, but what I noticed about a few weeks ago, actually it was after I think one of our previous meetings, one of our members mentioned that there was now a buffered bike lane on Rodeo, on the part of Rodeo that I guess is east of where Zia hits in. First of all, it wasn't clear to me if that was meant to be a buffered bike lane, because the outboard stripe was a little bit worn off. The inboard stripe looked brand new. What I did was I went back and measured it, and what had been a 5-foot distance between the old stripe and the gutter pan was now had another stripe inboard of it, reducing the width of the, I guess, the de facto bike lane to about 4 feet. So first of all, I was wondering if it was the intention of the city to create a buffered bike lane. I looked into the NACTO guide, and it did say that if you have a buffered bike lane, you can basically rob some of the bike lane to create it. So what my question was, is the city restriping with buffered bike lanes or non-standard bike lanes? If so, what guidance are we using? What is the schedule for doing this? Where are we doing it? Or is this all irrelevant, or this wasn't really the intent? So my concern is if we narrow the bike lane on some of these higher speed roads, or in that case, Rodeo, where there's one lane and a big island, all we're doing is telling bicyclists to ride closer to the curb, basically. Instead of giving bicyclists more space from motor vehicles by, say, narrowing the travel lane or splitting the difference. So I was wondering if you could sort of fill in this committee on what is being done and what the intent is. And I'll open it up to everybody else because I'm not on the technical review committee.
My name is Gene Wolfenbarger. I'm the city traffic engineer. Whenever we have a road rehabilitation, we decide whether or not that's an opportunity for us to create bike lanes, and more specifically buffered bike lanes along with narrowed lanes. With rodeo, we didn't have a whole lot of room to work with, so that was a hard decision. We had to decide between the hard median and the curb. And so the lanes themselves were narrowed up a little bit, as much as they could for that speed of road. And yes, we did intend to add a bike lane buffer to provide some safety for the bicyclists on that road.
One thing I noticed, well, because I rode out there a couple of times, once with my tape measure, was because it's winter and there had been some winter storms, about the only part of that bike lane that wasn't filled with debris was the buffered part. And it wasn't clear to me whether it was legal for a bicyclist to ride in between those two stripes, because normally a double line means don't go there. But if I rode anywhere to the right of the buffer, and in a lot of cases, I was riding through a lot of grunge, which is another problem with bike lanes in inclement weather or winter. We don't have an infinite budget. We can't sweep all the time. So we're essentially pushing bicyclists more into the debris field if we're telling them, don't ride near traffic, because it's normally the motor vehicle traffic that clears the grunge. So there was a complication that I saw that bicyclists would have to deal with this time of year, if not some other time.
That's noted, of course. Obviously, it is more of a challenge this time of year. And like I said, we didn't have a whole lot of room to work with. Rodeo was a bit more of a challenge. I tried to narrow the travel lane as much as I could, but there has been some push, I think, to try and include bike lane buffers where we can, with the intent that that is part of the bike lane. But
okay,
we do understand what you're saying about the maintenance.
Okay, what formal guidance are you using?
Well, we're using the MUTCD and the NACTO guides. Again, the hard infrastructure, we were limited to what we could do.
Yeah, it seems to be in a situation like that, I don't really see where we're gaining anything by creating a buffer where there's not room for a buffer. I would hope we would have them where there's more room for you to re-engineer the lane widths. But in a situation like that, where we really don't have room to provide a 5-foot bike lane, which might be more appropriate for that road, are we really gaining anything by basically telling bicyclists, okay, if you want to stay away from traffic, ride closer to the curb? So to me, it's sort of a mixed message in terms of.
So for the future, we'll take that into account next time we have that same situation.
Yeah.
I believe on Yucca, when we redid it, we had a lot more room to work with, and it worked out a lot better.
I think in general, they're great ideas. As long as we, as I said, not robbing Peter to pay Paul, which I don't blame you for, because that's one situation we just didn't have the room. So, Mr. Chair, defer to the rest of the committee.
Sure. We'll go to Member Gerlitz and then Member Painter, then Member Bordegree.
Ms. Wolfenbanger, did I say that correctly?
Wolfenbarger.
Wolfenbarger, thank you. I apologize. 2 questions. One, where else are buffered bike lanes being thought of being implemented? And has the traffic engineer ever thought of removing parking lanes in order to put buffered bike lanes in? Is there any thought to that, and where else are buffered bike lanes being put in?
Well, we're trying to make it a goal of ours to have buffered bike lanes where we can, just to have that separation, just based on feedback from different people and working with the MPO as well. I think, we were expecting to maybe get some feedback on rodeo from the BPAC and others to see how that worked, so that could help guide us moving forward. But the objective is to try and get buffered bike lanes as much as we can, especially on higher speed roads.
All right, thank you. No, I would agree with Cal that Rodeo Road, I also bike it often. I don't think it's quite an advantage to putting that narrow buffer lane in. But there are some cities that have taken 4-lane roads and have eliminated one side in order to put some wider buffer lanes in there. And I'm wondering if the city of Santa Fe is considering any of that. St. Mike's comes to mind.
Yes, we have the space when we're reconstructing. The objective would be for wider bike lanes as well as wide.
And where would that be?
Well, I think St. Michael's is one of those roads that we're looking at. Anywhere where we're planning on possibly putting in a road diet. Cordova, for instance, that between Cerritos and St. Francis.
Thank you.
I was just going to draw out the obvious difference between Yucca and Rodeo, and that's that we have medians in the middle of Rodeo and you don't have them in Yucca. So obviously you've got a lot of extra room in Yucca. It sounds like, and it's just my opinion, it sounds like you need to have some very clear design guidelines, some cross sections that you will try to incorporate anytime you're redoing a road, repaving it or reconstructing it. Obviously, I think on Rodeo, an ideal situation would have been to take those medians that the city refuses to maintain anyway, except unless it's a election year or something. But otherwise, they go pretty much just neglect it. And if there's going to be a bunch of weeds out there, you might as well narrow them down and give more road land to the bicycles. But I think it really it would behoove you and the whole city to have some strict guidelines, be it cross sections that you will use repeatedly, as opposed to saying, well, on this one, I think we can do this. On this one, I think we can do this, because somewhere down the road, someone's going to say, well, over there, they got that, but we only got this. How come? And then you're in front of a committee like this all the time explaining why you did this on that instead, not that. Anyway.
So when we're reconstructing a road, the standards would be much higher, obviously. You know, when we would narrow the medians in this case or make it wider, if we have, you know, if the right of ways available and we have the space, obviously, so that they would be to higher standards. In this specific case, the road was being repaved, so we took that as an opportunity to just try something out and see how people would react to it.
Personally, I think it's a great idea, you know, and I understand what Cal and everybody's saying, that perhaps it narrowed it a little bit more than what most bicyclists would like. Sounds like the fact that bicyclists can use the whole lane anyway, I'm not so sure that it's a big issue, you know, if, no, I never ride in a rodeo. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you.
Chair, and thanks for being here. Really appreciate it, having the traffic engineer here to, and I know, I'm just going to piggyback on what he just said about having standards. I think that's always ideal. That's theoretical. But I want to, Santa Fe, she's come into a job where, you know, there's very few opportunities where new roads are made. So this is practical. I appreciate it. And we have to be, you know, this is, you know, it's not like a, what's the word? It's not like a workaround, but I just thank you for working on that road, because, you know, instead of saying, oh, it doesn't have the specs, we can't do anything to it. So you did, and it's already way better than it was. I live right at that corner as everybody on this board knows now. And I've talked about Cal with this, about this with the bike lanes on Rodeo. I'm on Yucca, because Yucca is practically 4-lane. I'm curious if it's possible, and was it considered, there doesn't need to be the chicken lane. It's so wide. You've got room for 2 lanes and then wider bike lanes. Why? There's a whole stretch, I call it a chicken lane for left turners, but you don't need that. I'm not an engineer, but I walk the street and I use the street. And do you know what I'm referring to?
I do know what you're saying. We did make an effort just to keep the middle lane as it was before. We didn't change it from the original dimension. Some of the thought behind that was to have the travel lanes be narrower, because along with narrower travel lanes, that produces some traffic calming effect.
Thank you. Exactly.
So that's part of what we're trying to do as well.
Yeah, no, I get, and you did. I think you better delineated it. However, why not change the width of the middle? What's that based on? When, like, why is there a lane width in the middle of the two lanes?
I think we were working like from the curb in, once we had a wide enough bike, you have a certain width for the bike lane, a certain width you want for the travel lane, and then that leaves that middle space open. Again, we had room to work with in between the curbs. So we were just working with the room that we had.
And I appreciate this. This may sound tedious, but I think you had a lot more room to work with. That middle lane is like a huge lane. And so you would have had room to do more with the bike lanes. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then it would be more proportional and shared. Right now, there's still just, I mean, it's a runway from Yucca. I mean, from Rodeo all the way to Santa Fe High. And that's, doesn't need to be. So it is traffic calming, but further, if it doesn't violate, practices, just get rid of the lane.
When we move forward in developing the complete street standards, they're a lot better, obviously, than what the room that we only had to work with. So, and they do show wider bike lanes, and we are trying to be flexible on travel lanes with the consideration that we want narrower vehicular travel lanes for traffic calming purposes. As far as the middle lanes, yes, we're also looking at that as well, but it really depends on a lot of factors as to, whether how much left turners you have and whether or not it's being shared with a raised median, how accommodating is to turning movements, et cetera, et cetera.
There's not very many left. I wouldn't even propose it if there's a bunch of left turn problems, and there's not at all. And I do disagree with my board members to each side of me that the medians on Rodeo, not only do they need to stay, they're a big part of that streetscape, and they're only making it a little teeny better, Rodeo Road. So whether we maintain the landscape or not, that's traffic calming too. So I just need to put that out there.
Yes,
Thank you.
You are absolutely right. That does provide some traffic.
Other comments from members? Spencer, this was your items.
No more comments from me. I would just like to thank you both for discussing this with us.
Thank you, Counselor and board members.
Yes, Ms.
Because
Flores.
member Steve Pilcher is attending online, and I do not know if he's
right.
raising his hand. Because he is also asking some questions about the Rodeo Road project. If you can please.
Sure. Member Pilcher, I apologize. We can't see the Zoom screen in front of us. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
No, I do not. I think I inadvertently unmuted myself or raised my
Okay.
hand, excuse me.
Oh,
My
okay.
apologies.
And in the future, I'll make sure to remember to double check back with you in case you have any questions. I apologize. Okay, well, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Brooks, for being here with us tonight. Have a great evening. Right, let's go to move on to 7E. Discussion on sidewalk repair and responsibility as described in Santa Fe City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Sections 23-1.6 and 1.7. Member Abo, this item is yours. Floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And on pages 34, 35 of the packet, I think or 35, 36 of the packet is the current city ordinance on sidewalk maintenance repair. This ordinance pretty much mirrors the state law. And with the exception of it identifies Regina as the responsible party. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, my reading of this is that all properties fronting public roads in Santa Fe are required to have a sidewalk, and construction and maintenance of that sidewalk is the responsibility of that property owner. The enforcement responsibility to make sure that happens is the responsibility of the public works director. And it's a relatively unfortunate arrangement because what civil servant is interested in reaching out to property owners and saying, oh, your 350 feet of sidewalk needs to be built or needs to be repaired or whatever. And if you won't do it, we will do it and we will bill you and we will put a lien on your property. That's essentially what the ordinance does. It's basically a washing of hands of the responsibility. And so I looked around, you know, I walk around a lot. Angela walks on Yucca where there's plenty of room. I walk downtown where there's not plenty of room, and I walk on Pacheco a lot because my office is close to there, and I have to cross back from one side of the road to the other, to the other, to the other, and so I know where to go. And it's one of the things I looked for in talking about this. So, you know, my understanding is that this enforcement and compliance action doesn't really happen. And I'd love staff or any of you to correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that the city does not reach out to property owners unless you can correct me, to say your sidewalk is non-compliant, it's not ADA compliant, and so it needs upgrade. If that happens, I'd love to know about it, but I don't know. And Mr. Brooks, if it sounds like you're aware of this, thanks.
Fortunately, I'll be more than happy to address this, Chairman and committee members. The city does go out, and we go out and we send notices of violations to people where we have complaints that it's not in ADA compliance. And when I say ADA compliance, I'm talking about trip hazards, because widths are something, especially in the city of Santa Fe, that are hard to, you know, Pacheco, for instance, you walk up and down it. We only have a limited amount of right of way in a lot of those areas. That's why there isn't anything. And so, but we do, and we do have funds. Within the last 2 years, we've probably undertaken 30 projects or so that we go out, we use our on-call contract. We first we contact the property owners with the notice of violation if they're non-responsive, and we send contractors in and we file liens against those properties. So it's something that, due to staffing for several years, we were unable to really go hard at it. But the other issue that came into line is funding. We never had a funding line item that we could go in and do this with. And without a funding line item, there's really nothing else we can do.
Great.
That's been established. And so we are moving forward. We're doing, like I said, we take them on a case by case, and we don't actively go out looking for these situations, but we do from the CRMs, we go out and evaluate, and if it needs to be fixed, we fix it.
Mr. Chair, thanks so much. That's really great to hear. And go ahead, Judith.
Thank you. I have comment and a question, and please correct me if this is incorrect. I thought that there was a proposed bill that went towards the state legislature to make this the responsibility of cities, and it didn't succeed because municipalities don't have the budget to do that. So that's just one comment, and I think it was maybe last year or the year before. I do have a question about what a homeowner is responsible for. So, sorry, we're picking on Yucca tonight. That's my neighborhood. So at the end of our street, we have a house that's on a corner. So the front is there, then they've got the side, which is something de Vista or whatever, and then their property also abuts Yucca. Does that mean they are responsible for all the adjacent sidewalks or just the front? Because it sounded like it was for all of them.
The interpretation that we've gotten out of legal is that it's what fronts your property.
Okay, so they're not,
So the section along Yucca and City Crews have gone in and within the last 6 months, fixed several stones, sections along Yucca. That we've replaced where they've lifted, there were trip hazards and things like that. So City Crews have gone in and taken care of those areas. And we do have in the streets department, we have a concrete maintenance area that we go in and of course, depending on funding, we replace as much as we possibly can.
so may I ask a follow-up question about that particular project? Because the sidewalk is messed up for quite a stretch. And I noticed when it got fixed that it was, instead of doing the whole stretch, there were certain parts that got fixed. And it looked like there was some work done to make it ADA accessible as well. But there's still some very hairy sections that I believe are trip hazards. So I'm wondering, is that budget related that you wouldn't do a whole stretch and you would do here, here, and here? Like, how does that work?
Well, most of it is budget related. I mean, we've got, of course, we have to take care of everything throughout the city of Santa Fe. So it's not only District 4, but it's 1, 2, and 3 also. So, I mean, it's a huge area, which we have a very, very, very limited budget as to what we can do. So we pick and choose to try to take care of what's the worst. And of course, along Yucca, we went in and we replaced, I believe it was 4 of the radiuses on the curves to make them ADA compliant. And what that part is when we go in and do road rehabilitation, which I mean mill and fill, mill it out and refill it with paving. State requires us to go in and bring those intersections up to ADA compliance. And so that's a part of the road rehabilitation, and the other was a part of just general maintenance.
This is more of a diatribe than a question. I'm not really directing it at you because you're not in charge of policy, but I was involved a little bit in trying to advocate for that bill at the legislature to make the municipalities responsible for sidewalks. I mean, if bicycling and pedestrian activity are part of transportation, I find it rather hypocritical that the city will rebuild roads, but dump on the property owner to repair or replace a defective sidewalk. I mean, a lot of the people in my neighborhood, I'm over in Casa Solana, are pretty old. They're not rich. A lot of them are on pensions. They can't afford this. And I talked about this to one of my counselors who said, well, we'll just put a lien on the property. Well, that's kind of cold and cruel to people who are retired, who may have high healthcare costs, who may be looking at going into assisted living and saying, well, we're going to take some of your money away because the city is not willing to support the transportation that we claim we're interested in, which is pedestrian activity. So that's not your job to fix that. That's the job of the governing body to fix that. And I got the impression that the governing body had no interest whatsoever in changing that, at least for Santa Fe. And I think that's rather hypocritical for us if we're talking about being a more sustainable community. So there's my diatribe. It's not a question. It's where I stand on this. I could afford to fix a sidewalk. My neighbors are old. One just had a stroke. They can't.
Mr. Chair, the purpose that I brought this up is my understanding is that Santa Fe is a home rule city. And if Santa Fe chose to do something different than state law in this instance, it could. And I wanted to discuss this because of funding. I've been doing money for a long time and for public institutions. And I went out and found the city of Ithaca. And what I'm going to do is send the website to Romella so she can bounce it out to you all, and no talking among yourselves once you get it. Yeah, Ithaca, New York, in 2014, put together a sidewalk ordinance. They said they had essentially the same thing. It's the responsibility of the property owners. Nothing was getting done. And they have freeze and saw. So they had sidewalks that were like this, you know, that you can't really grind down. And in 2014, they passed this law that for each residential property, no matter its frontage, would pay $70. Each commercial property would pay a fee based on the square footage of the building and the length of the frontage. They just raised the rates a little bit last year, and I think they raise $1.5 million a year. So they're broken up into sidewalk districts. So the money collected in District 1 would be spent in District 1, and they have a group, they have staff, they have a group that prioritizes sidewalk improvements and goes out and gets after them. So if I'll bounce it out and give a little in the thing I give to Ramella. I would love you all to look at it to see if it's something we want to bring perhaps to the governing body to say, hey, this is a sustainable way for us to potentially incrementally improve. So the fee was $70 for residences. This is Ithaca. I don't really know what the standard of living or the cost of housing is or whatever, but they've got a couple $1 million a year, and their progress is not fixing a corner here and a corner there. They've got significant progress. So I would really love for the committee to possibly take an interest in this, because in my experience, if you want a program, first figure out a recurring funding source, not some drop from the sky grant, but a recurring funding source that you can just count on, that is not onerous, and that everybody sees the value to. So that's the reason I brought it up. Sorry for my own diatribe, but I would love, you kind of walked right into it by saying, yeah, we do it, but there's not a lot of money. Because I think money is the key to this. And I would hope that fellow committee members would maybe look at the Ithaca program and see what they think. There's a lot of stuff there. So thanks so much for this. Appreciate it.
Sure. Member Abel, Member Painter.
I have a question, Mr. Abel. The Ithaca, were they taxing, because that's what it boils down to, were they taxing just those homeowners that didn't have a sidewalk, or everybody in the whole city got that?
So everyone in the city pays an assessment. If you just built your development, you get to not pay in for 20 years or something like that. There's a way that you can get waived. Let's say the year before this passed, you rebuilt the sidewalk in front of your house. You can prove those expenses. You can go to the city and say, hey, wait, I just spent GM emulsion. I just spent, 40 grand with GM emulsion. You can actually get waived until, 20 years worth. So it's relatively complicated in theory, but it seems relatively simple. A Walmart would pay $4 grand a year or something like that. And, Katie's hair salon would pay $350, dollars a year, but a residence would pay $70 a year. And then, we've got council districts. So maybe money collected in District 1 stays in District 1, District 2, et cetera, et cetera. There are a couple of different ways to do it, but I think it's something worth exploring. It's within our mission to advise the governing body to do stuff to make it better. And everybody, from the disability folks, everybody realizes we need to do something to make it better. So
Follow up on that. Thank you for that answer. I remember my train of thought here. Number one, people who have bought a house already have a sidewalk. You've already paid for that sidewalk. It's included when you buy your house. Because when the developer builds it, he charges you for the driveway and the sidewalk. So they've already paid for it once. It doesn't seem fair to ask them to go back and say, okay, all you people who just bought these houses and you've paid an exorbitant amount of money in Santa Fe for it, we're also going to now hit you up for every year or every 2 years, whatever it is, an extra $70, $100, because other parts of the city need sidewalks. So I don't quite see how there's an equity issue.
So do you only walk in front of your house? This is a public facility. And so if your neighbor if you bought a house and you've got good, clean sidewalk, and to get from you to the coffee shop, you have to walk in front of 20 other properties that do not have sidewalk, would you like a recurring source of money to improve the pedestrian infrastructure for everyone. That's the argument. So
So
read
you're-
this,
you're
read this.
asking Me, would I like to pay for everybody else to put sidewalk in front of their houses year after year? No.
No, what I'm asking you is, do you only walk in front of your house?
I understand what you're saying, and some of those people who don't have sidewalks walk in front of my house and take advantage of having a sidewalk there. So should I be able to get like a toll and charge?
Yeah, actually read the information, and they've been through, all the devil's advocate work. And so I think it'd be worthwhile looking at it.
I had one other thing to bring up. One of my early jobs, I was working in the Public Works Department, city of Boulder, Colorado. We used to get sued all the time because in a lot of old part of Boulder, they had flagstone sidewalks. And of course, they were uneven as can be. So people kind of got the idea that you could go out there and you could trip. And you could scrape your finger, your arm, whatever. And you could come in and you could threaten to sue the city, and the city would not want to go through a suit, so they paid you some money. After that happened, year after year after year for a while, the city went out and replaced all those flagstones and put in real concrete sidewalk. I see that really as a function of the city. I don't see it as asking people who have already paid for a sidewalk in front of their house to pay for it throughout the city. Which is kind of what this sounds like getting into. But I just thought I wouldn't have supported.
Any other comments, or Member Spencer?
This goes back to what I said initially in the middle of my diatribe, is that we don't expect the homeowner to just pay for the road in front of their house. The road is a public facility for all of us. Sidewalks should be a public facility. So there should be, I think Mr. Abo's comment that there are ways to have a dedicated fund makes sense, because we should all be responsible for the city's infrastructure, not just the infrastructure in front of our house, because we all use the city's infrastructure. I mean, I don't think we should put the onus on the property owner. As Mr. Abo said, if you bought into a new subdivision, sure, you should be exempt. People who are buying into Casa Solana are buying into homes that were built in 1960, 59, 60, 61. Hopefully the city doesn't expect me to move the telephone pole in front of our house, because that's not ADA compliant, but we do need to find a way to help people not be faced with a lawsuit because they can't afford to fix their sidewalk. I think this is a public service issue. We should be looking at this like we look at any other public program that supports the public good. Yeah, that's where I'm a liberal.
Member Spencer? Okay.
Parallel, I would ask is that, do we get an extra tax to pave the roads? No, every time. I know, and I agree. Well, I was gonna say, we do already pay taxes, and out of those taxes we pay, they fix our roads. They do other stuff around the city, other than,
I welcome this argument.
sorry?
I welcome this argument.
It sounds like the city isn't collecting enough taxes to do this additional thing. So if we're going to do this additional thing, we have to have the money.
Thank you for bringing this up. And it is really you just brought up sidewalk districts. We have highway districts, we have road districts. How come we don't have sidewalk districts? We need a sidewalk coordinator. And, we talk about bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. Looking at the streetscapes as a continual public good is actually what they are. And this would go so far in making things more walkable. And but the devil's in the details, but the fact that you came up with a way to maybe pay for it, I think administering such a program like that would be pretty difficult. But thank you. I'm going to look at that. I think Santa Fe, I've been the historic preservation planner for the city of Santa Fe many years. And I always say this when you hear about road standards and ADA compliance, I'm not saying things shouldn't be, but let's always remember too, like downtown, we're not going to widen sidewalks. We're not going to remove flagstone that's historic. That is unique here. So, we don't make uniform standards. They don't work. So, but mainly I just wanted to say this is an excellent discussion piece for the bike and pedestrian task force. I know that it changed from the I always called it BTAC, right? But with Commissioner or Counselor Hill Coppler, it became pedestrian. And that brought much more of a focus on safe walking, safe biking. And so it brought in this realm to what's been more bicycle and trails focused as a committee. I like that it's multimodalism and it is transportation and it is public good. And it's so let's keep going on that one. But I'm serious, a pedestrian coordinator looking at districts block by block. It's a planning function too. And I'd love to do that job. Yeah.
Thank you, Member Bordiger. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Brooks as well. Sure, absolutely.
One quick comment, Mr. Bode basically hit the nail on the head. Without a reoccurring fund, you can't put together a maintenance program. And that's the problem, is we don't have a reoccurring fund to take care of sidewalks. And if you don't put that in place first, then it won't work.
Mr. Chair, absolutely. You know, if it's subject to appropriations, which, you know, change with the weather, I think it's difficult. But if it's a dedicated fund that can really only be used for that, then it's really easy for governing body members to appropriate those funds.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Well, thank you all for the fruitful discussion. Look forward to getting the information that Ms. Gloriosa Moss will send out. So, oh, Member Pilcher, are you still with us?
No, again, a mistake. I need to stop moving my mouse around apparently.
Might you have any questions, Member Pilcher?
No, I also enjoy having this discussion when we all get the facts in front of us.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and move up to item 7F. Request to approve appointment of Kempton Jackson at member at large to the Promotion, Education and Programming Subcommittee. Member Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gabriel Garden, who was on our subcommittee, had to step back due to his work responsibilities. And Mr. Jackson, I met on one of Tim Rogers' bike rides and is a bicycling enthusiast and expressed interest in BPAC. So I am requesting that he be approved as a member at large of the PEP subcommittee.
So moved. I'll go ahead and approve Kempton Jackson as a member of the Promotion, Education and Programming Subcommittee, effective immediately.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. Next up is item 7G, Galisteo Street Bike Path Demo. Mr. Van Heck, the floor is yours.
For as the presentation is going to be brought up on the screen, let me give you a little background. I was the chair of the committee that eventually gave rise to the traffic calming ordinance, Santa Fe. Having grown up in Holland, I was eminently familiar with how you do traffic calming, bike facilities, bike amenities, pedestrian amenities, and all these things. All that was written up in the traffic calming ordinance, which had all the right words in it and some funding. So, 20 or more years have gone by, and very little of what is expressed in the philosophy of the traffic calming program has actually ever made it into concrete and asphalt. any other thing that can be seen on the ground. The only thing that obviously is there are traffic humps, streets that have requested that, at the request of the neighborhoods. So, oops. So this is a website, by the way, where I keep notes. The way I work, I keep notes on the website. And I got what piqued my interest again to become active in this kind of business was the proposed rebuilding of Cerritos. There was a public meeting early on where various proposals were shown, including one that had a proper protected bike path, which was rejected for all kinds of reasons. One of the engineers said, no, we cannot do that because we need the bike lane for drainage, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm afraid that the same thing is going to happen with the Complete Streets project, where the words are nice, but then when you look at what is actually proposed for various neighborhoods, is the proposals are just more, not a lot different. It's just more decorative paint on the asphalt. It's just, everybody knows these bike lanes don't work. We hear that over and over again. People don't feel comfortable in these bike lanes. Bike lanes always get, people drift into the bike lanes all the time. Places that have sidewalks, when you look, where are the bicycles? They're on the sidewalks, they're not in bike, especially on Cerritos. And what I see in the Complete Streets project is just decorative paint on the asphalt. And I think if 10 years from now, you ask, what have we done for bicycles? All we have is stripes on the asphalt, the same complaints, dirt in the lane, people parking there, dangerously close. You know, even when there are when it's doubly striped, it doesn't feel safe. So I think we're not aiming high enough. It is, you know, if all we have is decorative paint on the asphalt, I think we might as well hold up and go home. So I think we should aim a little higher. That's what this proposal is about. Where is that? What browser? No. I want to. It's a web page. I just want to go back to where I came. There a back button on this browser? Okay. Yeah. Okay, there we are. We're there. Thank you. So anyway, so one of the problems is that we have, so there's a bunch of links having to do with this. Traffic safety, bicycle safety. And so the proposal that I have is to at least put on the ground one hard example of what the real safe speed is with the protected bike lane. As an example, because most people in the city, they have no idea what a safe bicycle amenities on a city street is. So the proposal is this. I just picked a section of street of Galisteo between Cordova at the bottom and Coronado at the top. This is a piece of street that is really wide. There are very few residences on the right-hand side, and a typical cross-section indicated here with the little red line looks like this. It is. So anyway, there's 33 feet between the curbs. The striped car lane is 17 feet wide. And then there's lots of asphalt on both sides, and there are sidewalks on both. Now, the street is not particularly dangerous because of the immensity of the asphalt, but it gives us an opportunity to build something real. And that is the following. If I start on the left-hand side, where most of the residences are, we just leave the sidewalk in place, 4.5 feet. Then we reserve 8 feet for parking. And there is a 10-foot driving lane, no more, no less. And then then there is a curb, a hard curb, some 4 foot for planting, Tamisha, weeds, et cetera, et cetera. And then and that leaves like 15 feet on the right-hand side for a combined pedestrian bicycle space. By the way, the 8 feet on the left-hand side should be with bulb outs, such that the driving lane actually is 10 feet, not 18 visually. The other thing is what is done in many places that really defines narrow lane and defines the left-hand side as not driving is you give it a different type of pavement. For example, permeable pavement, bricks, something else. Typically, you want something really bumpy that people don't naturally drive there. This is one of these traffic calming. And then, of course, you have to do little technicalities. So, for example, at the top of the project area where the bicycle lane is to merge with the cars at the intersection with Cordova, Coronado, sorry. This is where the old road really enters the old part of the city, narrows very, very much. And there you have to merge give up your bike lane, merge with traffic. So one of the ways to do that in a traffic calming sense is you make it the whole intersection of traffic table. You go up, bike path merges, you pass the intersection, and down you go on the rest of the trail. And by the way, that allows you to remove the stop sign. There is a nuisance stop sign. Now, so it allows us to make an on the ground example of what you really want to aim for, not just some paint on the asphalt, diagonal buffer paint. None of that really makes bicycles feel safe, as we hear over and over. Of course, this is not the only, and just by coincidence, I mentioned other streets like Hospital Drive and Alta Vista, which also have an infinity of asphalt. The one on Hospital Drive is particularly egregious because the curb-to-curb distance is more than 46 feet. The lane width from the center line to the bulb out is almost 16 feet. And there is plenty of space. There are sidewalks, grass. And so this is another street that could be reconstructed with safe bike path. A single lane as it is now. And Alta Vista is another one of those streets that has lots of elbow room. Bicyclists don't like it. These silly bulb outs that really don't do much, but they're interesting decoration. So I think so. This is a plea for a demonstration project to have an actual section of the street with a proper bicycle amenity, and implicitly a plea for aiming higher. If the best we can do is ask for more paint on the street, maybe more sweeping here or there, I think that's just fine. Because we all know that bike lane, people hate those bike lanes. they know they're not safe. For example, if you imagine 10-year-old girl on a little pink bike in the bike lane, in front of, say, Walmart. Guarantee you, you get also 911. Parents will be called in for reckless endangerment. A proper bike path is where this 10-year-old girl can bike to her friend's house. That's what a bike lane with just a bit of paint on the asphalt. Anyway, that's my diet.
Presentation.
So I think what you're talking about is something be called like a cycle track or something like that, where it's completely separated from the road.
The key is in fact, as you say, the asphalt is for the cars, and then there's a curb, and then up there is bicycles and pedestrians.
You have two-way traffic on that, right? On that.
It depends on the street. For example, on Hospital Drive, there's plenty of room to have a path on both sides. Some streets, in principle, I'm not in favor of having two-way traffic on one side of a two-way street, because then you end up having to cross, you know, at the end of the section, the bicycle would have to cross to the proper side. And that is not really, that's not really ideal. So ideally, you want to separate or joint pedestrian bicycle amenity separated from the car.
Okay, well, cycle track is usually something that's separated, physically separated from the road, maybe next to it, but separated by curbs or median or whatever the case may be.
For example,
But usually, a lot of times, those are two-way. That's why I wasn't clear when you were talking.
no,
You're just saying one way.
For example, if you go to look at the design proposals for Cerrillos, option number 5, I remember correctly, had a bicycle and pedestrian amenities on both sides of the reconstructed Cerrillos, which is just what you want. Otherwise.
Thank you.
And in many places, so the city is full of these roads that have plenty of room to do that. Now it's expensive. I mean, it's not cheap, but I should, you know, I remind you that the city has been building infrastructure for cars for about 100 years, and we're a little behind. The fact that so the money for bicycles should not be separate from the money for car amenities, just like we just argued that money for sidewalks have to be, you know, separate from the general infrastructure that we're trying to build for. I don't think that the money arguments are not really valid. There's plenty of, you know, there's plenty of money to lay down asphalt. When they say, well, bicycle.
Thanks so much, Mr. Van Hig. This is very interesting and applaud your work on it. And let's make it happen. But my question, Counselor, is where does this presentation go from here? This was a thorough sort of analysis. Is it an idea that what happens next?
I think that's the will of the body, ultimately. I mean,
It was told, I saw that this project had been added to a list of proposed projects that the NPO has. Yeah, let's see. I was going to make the link. There is, I saw this project added, I submitted it, and it was added to a list of projects that I saw on an NPO website. It's not yet, so it's not completely nowhere.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Here, Bordiger, Member Bordiger.
Just one question. You brought up Cerritos Road, or maybe because I was reading it, is Cerritos Road being redone again? From St. Michael's to St. Francis?
Yes.
Rios to St. Michael.
No, St. Francis to St. Michael's.
Which in my longer lifetime, that happened not that long ago. Are they going to take more curb cuts out? Or, I mean, I guess this is all. Okay, is that?
For bicycle paths along Rios. Once it's in place, it'll be there for 40 years. Don't put a bicycle path in there now, you won't have a bicycle path. Rios is not a place where a 10-year-old can ride through the, through the.
So I have a follow-up question for the board or staff.
Is this better? I'll apologize. It's my phone.
Dutch?
It rings.
So I said, this is a question for us or staff. So the status of that project, I understood from MPO Eric's presentation that St. Michael's Bridge or St. Francis Bridge over St. Michael's is a big project. So this other one we're talking about, how can we be involved? Is it like too late? Does it all happen?
Chair Garcia, Member Board Gray, it's an NMDOT project, and our city traffic engineer and SFMPO, Public Works Department Director are involved in the review of the design. So if city traffic engineer is told to give us an update.
Well, in a nutshell, before we get too deep into it, there is a process where the road of Cerritos between St. Michael's and St. Francis is going to be reconstructed because the land is ultimately going to be, the road is going to be dedicated to the city of Santa Fe, and it's got to meet a certain threshold. So it's gone through a couple of public comment periods, and that's where folks such as City of Santa Fe representation and MDOT, and it's making its way through that process. And so it's not a project that's going to happen next year, but it's within the next 2 to 3 years that it's going to be constructed. So that's where we're at with that project, completely separate from the St. Michael's Bridge. Yeah. That one is, both are Cerritos is, because that is currently state. Yeah, nope, the state is funding it, and the state has to have it up to a certain threshold before they can give the road to the city of Santa Fe. Then the city will take it over, and that's becomes city property, and we maintain it from there on forth.
So it's up to how much we can get input into the DOT stuff, just like St. Francis.
Correct, and so there's been a couple public comment periods, as Mr. Van Heck had mentioned, which led to different designs, and so this has been years in the works. Yeah.
I'm learning a lot on this.
So, Mr. Heck, back to the topic at hand. Any other questions?
No. The committee, I would say we have to aim higher. Yes. Paint on the.
Okay.
Otherwise, 10 years from now, we'll still be arguing. Say, bike lanes, 40 mile. Yes.
Memorable.
Mr. Chair, Hubert, so you haven't been on the website, but you've obviously built a website that has more functionality than what you've gotten here. And is that something that is, Romello could possibly send the link to us so we could look at the work you've done? Or does it have everything you've ever done and we don't want to go there?
There's a lot of stuff that I have done, including other.
No, but if you give us a link for this project, will
Yes.
kind of be contained in there? Okay, great.
And if you know how to navigate, you can find all the other stuff.
Yeah.
From the traffic calming days.
Member Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that we have a memo from Tim Rogers about retrofitting bike lanes on Alta Vista Street and Hospital Drive, is it possible that your considerations could be part of this?
Love that. And I confess, it's a complete coincidence that these two streets end up in the next presentation also. But these streets, I can draw up an exact proposal along the lines of this one for those sections. Yes. Good luck.
Okay, that's my question. I'd be really interested to hear what this next project is about. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Van Heck. Really appreciate. Member Gerlitz.
I just wanted to be clear. So this project is in MPO's.
I saw it on a list of projects of MPO.
Okay.
There is a list of projects with scores.
So that sort of takes it out of our purview, does it not?
Not necessarily. And before, I don't know if Eric, do you want to confirm or, I mean, that this project is in the pipeline? Okay, so we can come back and maybe clarify for that, but I think ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, this is up to the will of the body. If we want to take into consideration this proposal, whether it's as proposed as on Galisteo or some other street in the city, I think the opportunity is ours, however we want to move forward with it. So, yes, Member Painter.
You may be aware of this, you probably are aware of it. I believe that, again, I hate to keep bringing up the city of Boulder, but one of the greatest places right next to Santa Fe in the world. That they recently did separate a bike path that is separated by a curb, and supposedly one of the first places in the country that actually has done that. So we now have an example we can take a look at and talk to them and find out, does it work, doesn't it work, what issues have they found before and after. So I would just suggest, you may want to look at that if you're not aware of it. And I'm sure the MPO will probably be looking at that also.
All right, well, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate that. I think definitely sparked some discussion, and I think there's an appetite for exploring this further. So thank you. So let's go ahead and go to the next item on the agenda, which is 7H. Request for a conditional approval of use of windfall capital funding for parking improvements at Salvador Perez Center to a commitment to design bike lane retrofits on Alta Vista Street and Hospital Drive. Mr. Tim Rogers, this item was brought forth by you, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And it's pretty fortuitous to follow a presentation that created a good segue to this. I agree that we can aim higher. I don't agree that striped bike lanes have no value. And the bike planning I've done does place value on striped bike lanes, and especially seeking what I would call low-hanging fruit, restriping roadways to create bike lanes without having to reconstruct the road or have a construction project. I think by the way, I missed the last two BPAC meetings. I think it's a first since BTAC ever existed, so I'm happy to be here. When I was here 3 meetings ago, I talked about the trials and tribulations of trying to get bike lanes retrofitted in this city. And we had some success. I think that the bike lanes on Siringo and on Galisteo that we got have some value. They're just striped bike lanes, but they give space to bicyclists. Can we do better? We probably can, but reconstruction of roads is a big step. I would be happy to have a bike lane on Galisteo. We retrofitted a bike lane on Don Gaspar about 12 years ago. That's the first and only time the city has removed parking in order to create space for bikes. Only time it's ever happened. So I would love to see it happen elsewhere. But there are many cases where the city has added parking at the expense of space for bikes. So when I gave my presentation 3 meetings ago, I talked about Alta Vista and Hospital, where 5 years ago, we had traffic calming projects that did nothing to, there was no consideration of bikes in these projects at all. It has to be recognized that bike lanes are part of traffic calming. They narrow the road for motor vehicles and they can go hand in hand with traffic calming. In the past, the city has approached them as if they're mutually exclusive. So when traffic calming was done on Alta Vista and on Hospital, it was to the exclusion of bikes. Those used to be comfortable roads for bikes because they were shared lanes. You didn't need to stripe a bike lane, although it might have helped. With the traffic calming, the roads have completely changed. The memo I wrote you here has a lot of the details. I included really what's new is some photos, because when the city did this traffic calming, it was claimed that there was already parking on Alta Vista, and it was not true. These are old screenshots that show the yellow curb. They show the no parking sign. Basically, before the traffic calming project on Alta Vista, there was no parking from St. Francis Drive to the veterinary hospital on Louisa Street. It was all no parking except for 3 spots next to the crosswalk that's in that picture. The city added more than 20 parking spaces as part of that project. Simultaneously, the city, a different part of the city, City Parks, built a public parking lot next to Salvador Perez, 45 spots. So basically we got at least 60 new parking spaces. There was no parking study to justify doing this. It was because they were building bulb outs and this was windfall space for parking. And that's how it worked. I'm amazed that they didn't add parking on Hospital. Hospital was designed as if they were going to add parking, but they didn't. In both cases, there's just a lot of wasted road space, just as the previous speaker pointed out. And we were told actually by some city staff at the time who no longer worked for the city, he was going to go look at Hospital. He thought that even with the traffic calming, we could stripe bike lanes there. And he was right. We absolutely can stripe bike lanes on that road. This is Alta Vista, not Hospital. We can stripe bike lanes on both of these roads. I believe that we should take back that parking. It was not justified. If the city is going to put more money into parking at Salvador Perez, it's the time to take this parking back, take that space back, and have bike lanes on both sides of the road. So when I saw that this windfall gross receipts tax money was proposed to be spent to improve parking at Salvador Perez, to me, that's enough. What I asked for last time, maybe it wasn't forceful enough, creative conversations about retrofitting bike lanes. This is an opportunity to right a wrong, basically an injustice. Hospital and Alta Vista should be bike-friendly streets. They are bike routes. Alta Vista is part of Bike Route 66. Hospital Drive has had bike route signs on it since the 90s, the first round. And there was zero consideration for bikes in these projects. So I would like, I know Councilor Garcia, that this gross receipts tax spending is going to go to a council vote at some point. And I think it should be linked. If we're going to approve spending more money on parking along Alta Vista Street, okay, it's for Salvador Perez, but it's all public parking. Let's take that excess parking back, put stripe lanes on Alta Vista Street, and let's do the same thing on Hospital. Let's look at, there are bump outs, and actually they're not even all across from each other. So there's plenty of space. There are pedestrian crosswalks where the bump outs are across from each other, and they may lack space for 2 bike lanes, but they may have space for 1 bike lane. By the way, we shouldn't just say no sharrows ever. This is how you use sharrows. You have a bike lane, you need to discontinue the bike lane at a crosswalk, use the sharrow right before that, then the bike lane picks up. That's how you use sharrows. So putting sharrows all over the place, I can see why people might have a problem with that. but they have a function, and that is to connect pieces of bike lanes where suddenly you have to share the road. So, I guess that's really my request to Mr. Chair and the committee is that we really, instead of just talking about maybe retrofitting bike lanes someday, let's do it. Let's tie it. If we're going to spend money on parking, let's spend money on bike lanes.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Do we have any comments or questions from the committee? Member Gerlitz.
Amen. Let's make it happen. How do we do it? I mean, I love the presentation. I love the idea of reclaiming parking. This is something that in Bike Santa Fe was part of the strategic plan, and other cities have done this as well to make it much more livable. And what you're proposing is that we actually have money to do it now. Let's do it.
Member Abo.
Mr. Chair, Tim, I'm a little confused. The current, I know what happened at Alta Vista, and I understand what happened at Hospital. They say, oh, well, there was an agreement that St. Vincent's would pay for some improvements that never happened, and so we made them do this even though we didn't want it. That was something that happened. But I'm a little confused about Alta Vista. So with this windfall, one-time, non-recurring money, is there a proposal to add parking for Salvador Perez, and where is that?
The proposal is to improve parking. I believe what it's referring to is the parking lot off of Alta Vista that is next to the soccer
The
field.
dirt lot?
It's a dirt lot.
Got it.
So they want to pave the lot.
And
So
so that's for the events. So when it's nighttime soccer games, they want to pave that lot.
Yeah, it's
So
not
you-
add parking.
And so your intention would be, sure, use some money, but also improve the bicycle infrastructure on that route. So you want to you want to link the two, or you want to supplant one with the other?
Oh, I have no problem with improving the parking lot for the soccer field. But and I don't know if it's up to the city to decide if the GRT could also be used to design and put in bike lanes. I would just like it to automatically be tripped by the fact that we're going to spend more money on parking along this street, that we commit to building bike lanes however we can.
So you're making the logical link between, when you add parking, you should also invest in bicycle infrastructure.
I think that's true.
Got it. Thanks.
Just before we get ahead of ourselves, the current proposal that's been put forth by the mayor's office is to allocate $1 million, excuse me, for improvements to the Salvador Perez soccer field and parking lot. And that's as much as I know. And so as far as the plan, what's being proposed, I've got a bullet point that states just that. So happy to explore it further, Tim, but I think the details are absolutely needed for this project because we've got $1 million being proposed. We can figure out how that allocation works out. But yeah, happy to continue it. Just wanted to put that out there for the folks to put it into context, the proposal Tim's talking about and the allocation of resources and what's being proposed. So Member Spencer, and then, oh, sorry, Member Painter had his hand up, then Member Spencer, Member Bordiger. And then we'll go to Ms. Webster.
It looks like, looking at the photo here, obviously the whole side of the road's parked up. And then looking in the distance there's looks like quite a few cars parked in lots on the right and probably the left too. I can't make out exactly what's happening there. So there's a lot of parking going on already. And you would say you think we need to strip parking off the road because obviously there's a demand for it. So, but regardless of the demand, you think we should take it off and just move it off into the parking lot, which hopefully would be enough to absorb what's happening on the road already. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I think that the parking was created regardless of whether there was demand. The
Well,
only,
there's a demand, and we see the demand.
okay, there are cars parked there. Those people could park in the lot at Salvador Perez. They would have to walk a little farther. I don't know why they parked there. I know when they did this traffic calming plan, they did point out that, you know, people said they wanted parking. Well, people will always say they want parking. They don't, you know, it's, so, you know, every one of those properties on the south side of the road has a huge parking lot. Okay. And so there was no justification. It was windfall parking. It's like, well, we're putting in bump outs, putting in bulb outs. What do we do with this extra space? Let's put in parking. I was amazed that they didn't follow suit on Hospital, and it may be because I was calling them on what they did on Alta Vista, and they were squirming a little bit, claiming that the parking was already there, but these photos show that it was not.
It sounds like on Hospital, I think a lot of the facilities up there have pretty adequate parking lots. At least when I go to the hospital, there's open spots every time I go.
It's an ocean of parking there, and the irony
That's
is,
they don't need it on the street.
the irony is that also simultaneous to that project, another 40-car lot was being built right at the corner with Lupa, I think, Lupita. Yeah, and so that's not a city lot, but this one, Alta Vista, it's a city lot. So the city really was creating all this parking at once.
Okay. Okay, well, all I was trying to make a point of is that there seems to be a demand for parking out there, and it may exceed what is being proposed. No, yes, there is a demand for parking. There's all these cars parked up there.
Do you have a picture?
But what I was going to suggest too is that, you know, we get a lot of people that come to us with all these different projects. They think it'd be great if we did this, and they're right. It would be great if we did that, or if we did this, that would be great. We need, I believe, to have some sort of list of projects where if all of a sudden there was a windfall, be it GRT or whatever, the money comes to us and somebody, the mayor or somebody comes and says, okay, we're going to give you $5 million. What's your favorite project? What needs to be done first? We need to be prepared to say our number one would be this if we had the money to do it. And I'm not saying that's not a good project. I'm not saying the other gentleman's projects are not good projects, but we just can't willy-nilly come in and we get a room full of people saying, do this project. That's the one we do. We need to have some rationale behind saying, this is the project we should spend money on. Because as you know, as everybody knows, money for bicycle projects is very, very limited, if not almost non-existent. So like I said, when we get that windfall, I think we need to be prepared to say, this is where we need to spend that money.
Thank you, Member Painter. Mr. Chair, I would like to address that. That's why we have a bike master plan. I wrote the bike master plan in 2012. It has a list of retrofits for bike lanes. We went at that list at a snail's pace. Not all, we didn't say every road needed a bike lane. We didn't say this needed a bike lane. It had shared lanes. It was okay. The traffic calming projects happened faster, and traffic calming on West Alameda, the pedestrian medians, those have precluded bike lanes. And these traffic calming projects are precluding bike lanes. Why do I pick these two streets? Are they a top priority? No, this is to right a wrong that the city did 5 years ago, that it must recognize that it did traffic calming with no real consideration for bicycles at all. And these are now they're in the bike master plan because now they need bike lanes. They've been forced to need bike lanes because of these projects. So this is not really willy-nilly. This is based on very recent history, and these are supported in the new bike master plan as priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Member Spencer, and then Member Bordiger.
I'm a little concerned that we know enough about the money here. As the chair mentioned, he was going to look more into how exactly what the money is, how it's allocated, what we're actually doing with it. I would be reticent to offer a motion right now until we get more than information. I guess through the chair or through Romella. So we know what exactly kind of quid pro quo we're having. I also agree with Member Painter that I'm a little concerned that we're getting stuff thrown at us that isn't necessarily the highest priority. I mean, this isn't the most dangerous street in the city. And if we have money and we have to improve things, I think there are better places to keep people from getting scraped up off the road, regardless as to whether this was a mistake to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Spencer. Member Bordiger.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate all these comments. I don't know, this is a question for you, Tim. I mean, the context of your presenting this to us tonight, you're on our agenda and this is what we were presenting. Was this going to be an action item tonight? Wasn't intended as an action item. Wait, it's a
I
presentation?
mean, no, I have a request that
Okay.
if the city is going to spend these gross receipts tax as indicated, that's okay. I'm not saying to change that around. I'm just saying it should come with a commitment to restripe this road with bike lanes. And so the money will have to come from somewhere, but that's not what I'm saying to take it out of this gross receipts tax. I'm just saying if we're going to continue to commit to put money into parking, then let's make an equal commitment to accommodate bikes. And if we have done parking at the expense of bikes in the exact same place, that's a good place to make the commitment.
Thank you. So I think we know we'd like more information about this money. That is just a bullet point on your screen. And I want to do a shout out in support of this presentation focused on these two very streets that are links, or like bike arterials. And because I have grown up here and played soccer over there, there was never a problem for parking. And you could not park on this street across the way. And I like the linkage that you're making because it's tangible and because it was screwed up from what it was before. And Hospital Drive, I ride a scooter. Those are dangerous. I've almost run into the bulb outs. They're actually dangerous. They're unsafe. And so that street does need to be reviewed to bring it back to a safer way for bikes and pedestrians. So I am adding my passion to this cause. This is the kind of thing that's pretty reprehensible that it happens. It's not like, there were evil forces, but I'm sure, those soccer, there's new demand for those soccer. We used to play just on the weekends and evenings, but there's a new demand for soccer playing there. And it's a wonderful thing. And if they're able to build the parking lot back there, this parking is not needed. And my board member here pulled up the current picture of Alta Vista, and during the day it's empty. There's no cars parked on the street. So again, you said it, I'm going to say it again. Everybody wants parking. Just wish we would look more into that, and planners need to show that, and it has to be proven to just build more parking. So I want to see it reversed too. So that's where I'm coming from. And thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. I would say the parking, there's cars parked there. They're just spread out more now.
One quick thing, because I did speak to the legislation earlier and I did look it up. And so was before the governing body last night. So it did get approved. The $1 million got approved. But within the memo, and again, I can reach out to Director McDonald to get a little more clarification, because as I mentioned in that bullet point that talked about soccer field and parking within the memo for the actual appropriation request, it states Salvador Perez Athletic Field is a vital community sports venue, one of the most highly utilized in the city. This $1 million appropriation will fund refurbishment of the field and is expected to take approximately 1 year. So there's not any mention of parking in this allocation approval. I can get clarification from Director McDonald and come before us next meeting to see what the plan is. Is the $1 million going solely to the refurbishment of the turf field, or is it some turf field, some parking lot? What does that breakdown look like? Because even when you look in the bar or the request for it, it's just got the figure. Whip Construction, Salpet is filled $1 million. So it doesn't break it down more than that. So I can get clarification And I'd hate for us to get ahead of ourselves. If that $1 million is all going towards the field, then doesn't mean this isn't a good opportunity to open up the discussion to look at retaking some of this space back. But circling back to the proposal and what was approved, it's kind of shifted from what was announced versus what was ultimately approved last night. Just wanted to put that out there for folks. Member Spencer.
Thank you, Chair Garcia.
Member.
I share Angela's passion on not providing infinite warehousing, free warehousing for cars at the expense of other forms of transportation. But I think we would benefit by having all the details on what exactly the city's money is being spent on, so we can write the best and most powerful motion to the governing body. Because I agree with Tim, this was a mistake. It should be fixed, but how we go about it and how strong a motion we make may depend on what we can find out about how the money is being spent.
I'm happy to get more micro details. Right now, this is very much macro information. Ms. Webster.
Committee members, since we're talking about Salvador Perez, and I want to speak in support of parking, but for bike parking. A member of Bike Santa Fe actually brought this issue to my attention a couple weeks ago. This member swims at the pool there at 6 a.m. a couple times a week, and he rides his bike there when he's able. The bike parking at Salvador Perez, the rack, is off to the side in a very dark location that's not safe, and a lot of people ride their bikes there, and they don't park their bikes at the rack because bikes get stolen so often. So they instead lock their bikes to the handrail going up the steps, which creates an issue for people who are disabled or elderly who are trying to get into the facility. So as perhaps you're looking at the spend of this money at that venue, perhaps additional bike parking so that people playing soccer or watching soccer at the facility could ride their bikes and park it in a well-lit, safe location, and perhaps need less car parking.
Thank you, Ms. Webster. Member Abo.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Seeing as the budget item was approved just for field use, I appreciate that you're going to reach out and verify that. I think that if they say, oh no, it's also for parking, I would ask them to bring it back before council because that was not clear. And in the interest of transparency, which we know this yeah. And I think, you know, if it is brought up, then that might be an opportune time to hook the need to improve the bicycle facilities on that street if they are intending to do that. If it's all going to go on more rubber for the field or whatever, then that's where it is. But I think if they do open it up. And another thing I'd just like to mention, I do recall that when the Complete Streets Ordinance was passed, Mayor Weber voted against it because it did not go far enough to get rid of cars in the city. I remember, I was gobsmacked, but I remember that. And I think that's something that he should be asked to remember. Maybe not by you, but but I think it's something that we should all do. We should all do is just kind of reiterate the goals we have with the increments we take. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Abo. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Rogers, any other?
Sure. Thank you for considering this. And I would just add that, you know, the gross receipts tax that's being spent on Salvador Perez, to me, it just is what brought this up again and made this seem like it's something that needs to be addressed. So whether that is linked to the, you know, whether they said they're going to do parking or not, you know, more important to me is just that the city have some resolve to fix these errors. And, you know, really, these are just, these could be restriping projects. Hospital in particular, since they didn't add parking, then we don't need to take away parking. We just need to stripe bike lanes in there. Alta Vista, you know, I think we should take the parking back. You know, we should take that space back. So thank you. I appreciate you considering.
Sure. And I would invite you to come back to next month's meeting. Full transparency, I don't know if I'll be chair because we get reappointed every 2 years. So, but I will commit to come back if I'm not appointed chair with that information for the committee. But I'll encourage you to come to that meeting just so you can get briefed as well.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you, Tim. I really appreciate this and the foresight and really wanting to look at it, how we can improve the infrastructure. So thank you. Let's go to move to the last item, which is item I, staff liaison end of the year end report. Holy moly, end of year already. Ms. Gloriosa Mas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the past 2 meetings, I reported on the accomplishments of roadways and trails because you are the advisory committee of roadways and trails. This year, tonight, I will focus on the accomplishments and opportunities and challenges for BIPA. So just to remind the committee, the Complete Streets Division has 4 sections: the streets, roadways, and trails, the streets and drainage maintenance, and you met the project administrator, Mr. Mark Brooks, the traffic engineering, which is headed by our traffic engineer, and the traffic operations, which is headed by our traffic operations engineer. So you are So you are the advisory committee of roadways and trails. So your purpose, in a nutshell, is to provide input and advice that supports the ongoing development and maintenance of a transportation infrastructure that makes bicycling and walking in the city of Santa Fe safe, equitable, viable, and comfortable modes of transportation, commuting, and recreation. This includes the responsibility to deliberate on city projects, plans, and policies that impact both on-road and off-road bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure to advise the governing body on such matters. So, since you are an advisory committee that came out of roadways and trails, we can, as a capital projects manager of roadways and trails, I can only speak of our projects. So we are managing 26 capital improvements projects, which are 12 are roadways, 9 are intersection, 4 are trails, and 1 bicycle wayfinding signage, of which 17 projects are under design, 5 are under construction, and 4 are completed projects. When I say completed projects, these are capital projects that we started from planning to construction. Those are completed projects. So talking about projects, I think we need to talk about the process for developing a project. It starts with planning. So what are the issues that you want to resolve? Where are we going to get the funding to build this capital project? Scoping is, what are the studies that you need to design your project? Then the third phase is design, and the last phase is construction. As BPAC member, BPAC is involved based on your duties and responsibilities in the resolution 2021-8. You are involved in the planning phase and the design phase. So planning, there are four major, or no, not four, 6 major planning documents. When I apply for funding, I look at these 4 planning documents. The first one is the SFMPO 2020-2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Why do I do this? In your duties and responsibilities, the first one is assist in the prioritization of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects to be completed using state, city, state, and federal funds through the development of the Santa Fe Metropolitan Planning Organization, Bicycle Master Plan, and Pedestrian Master Plan, and Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So in this plan, there are about, if I remember correctly, there are 68 identified fiscally constrained projects, of which 20 are city-led. So there's county-led projects and NMDOT-led projects. The city leads 20 projects, of which roadway and trails are working on 14 projects. 5 are construction phase, 8 are under design phase, and 1 planning phase. The 2019 Metropolitan Bicycle Master Plan. In that plan, there are phase A trail projects that these are short-term projects that must be implemented between 2019 and 2024. Out of 30 city-led trail projects, roadways and trails are working on 6. 3 are construction phase, 3 are design phase. What are these 3 construction phase? El Camino Real Academy Trail, Tierra Contenta Trail, and Cañada Rincon Trail. So out of 30, we are working on 6. And I think with the help of PPAC, SFMPO needs to prioritize these projects because, as I said before, these are not striping projects. These are construction projects. These are capital projects. So it starts from planning through construction. And a project like this, like for example, the Cañada Rincon Trail, the planning for this project started, I believe, in 2011 or 2012, and we're just going to construct it. So it takes a long time. So 5 years to complete a project is not enough. So I think the PPAC needs to request the SFMPO to prioritize these projects, and it's not like a wish list. There is also phase A projects for, it's called on-road bicycle improvements, which are all striping projects. And as I mentioned to you before, striping is not a project for roadways and trails. Striping is for streets and drainage maintenance and traffic operations, and for the city traffic engineer to decide which we can restripe. So I did not include it in the list because it's not capital projects. There is something called the Infrastructure Capital Improvements Plan for 2025, 2029. It includes 80 projects. So the city prioritized what infrastructure projects they want to work on. And out of 80 projects, there are 24 roadways and trails projects. And the governing body just passed the resolution, and there's a legislative priorities. Top 5 projects that the city prioritized for legislative funding. And number 5 is Arroyo Chamisos Trail crossing. So there is one city legislative priority of the 24 roadways and trails projects, and all 4 council district priorities are roadways and trails. At the request of member Yolanda Eisenstein, I will dive deeper on those priorities. So the city legislative priority, which I've been working for public works for about 5 or 6 years now. And this is the first time I've seen a roadway project that is a city legislative priority. So the council district priorities, there are only 4. And for District 1, they chose Cerro Gordo reconstruction. For District 2, they chose St. Michael's Drive Rail Trail Underpass project. For District 3, they chose Paseo del Sol extension. And for District 4, they chose Rufina Street, Lopez Lane intersection improvements. The 5th plan that I use for funding application is your plan, the BPAC strategic plan, fiscal year 2023-2033. In that plan, the BPAC prioritized 9 capital improvements projects, of which 2 are roadway projects, the Bachman Road and the Bishop's Lodge Road, which are both under design. There are 7 trails projects that are prioritized, and we're not doing anything. It's not maybe some of those rail projects are also prioritized in the bicycle master plan and Santa Fe, in the metropolitan transportation plan, but there is not enough money or staff to work on those projects. So the second phase that the BPAC is heavily involved is in the engineering design review. So in 2023, the technical review subcommittee has grown from 1 BPAC member, that is member Ben Pengili, and 2 members at large, with Mr. Nathan Lemons and Mr. Tim Rogers, to 3 BPAC members and 2 members at large. So now we have member Ben Pengili, and the chair now is member Dan Painter and member Eric Abel. They reviewed 9 roadways and trails design projects, and it's in your duties and responsibilities is to design plan sets, review plan sets at 30% and 90%. However, we have involved BPAC, technical review subcommittee, in all phases of design review. So conceptual design, 30% design, 60% design, 90% design. And they also reviewed 1 NMDOT project. What is your accomplishment in policy arena? One of your duties is to advise on policies, programs, and ordinances. You drafted Ordinance 2023-4, and that is known for everyone as the e-bike ordinance. And you drafted the maintenance and installation of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and it will be introduced on January 10 next year. And you also reviewed Resolution 2022-46, which is the complete streets policies, and the Ordinance 2023-I asked legal services because I could not find the final copy of the ordinance, but that is the unicycle bill. What is BPAC's accomplishments in terms of developing, reviewing, and advising on media and educational campaigns, providing information and promoting bicycle and pedestrian-related activities and education? So BPAC through PEP has conducted a radio interview during Bike Month, conducted outreach at Santa Fe Century, participated in District 4 survey and outreach meetings and Bike Santa Fe's relaunch, and partnered with SFMPO to conduct survey to assess who is using bike trails and for what. Why are you doing this? In the resolution, there is a goal you want to achieve. In Resolution 2021-8, it is to obtain diamond level designation for bike-friendly communities. In your BPAC strategic plan, it says to obtain gold level by 2023, by 2033. When BPAC started, when BPAC applied for bike-friendly community in 2017, there were 800 plus applications and 314 were awarded bronze, 82 were silver, and the city had a silver designation. This year, we submitted an application for gold, and the result will be out in early next year. So what are the opportunities? BPAC membership is full. There are all 10 members. And all members are active, because in the past, some members are not active. Some members don't really do anything. We now have a traffic engineer and a traffic operations engineer, which were vacant for several years. There's a strong partnership with SFMPO, SFCT, and Bike Santa Fe. And there are lots of funding opportunities, big and small. What are your key challenges? You are an advisory committee of roadways and trails, but your duties and responsibilities, your purpose is you need cooperation and coordination, not only from public works, which is streets and drainage maintenance, for striping, for pavement rehabilitation, and for clearing the bike lanes, sweeping the bike lanes, traffic operations, transit, parks, and open space. But you need also cooperation and support from land use department, for example, for code rewrite, police department for safety, economic development to realize trails is an economic development opportunity, bike lanes, complete streets, etc. So those are your key challenges, and maybe the tactics that are identified in the strategic plan is not appropriate. Maybe we need to go back to those tactics and say, okay, this is not really working. For example, your involvement in land use development code rewrite. It's not really working. How can we make it more effective? Because in your resolution, one of your duties is to recommend updates to the city's land use development code as they pertain to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and associated regulations. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Romella. Any questions from members? I'm not seeing any. I just, that was a lot of work that you all completed. And so that was all of y'all up here that made that happen, and Ms. Gloriosa. So thank you all. The work definitely does not stop. I think 2024 will just be, if not as productive, more, just given some of the initiatives and just the conversations we had tonight. So let's keep the momentum going. If no other discussion, happy to continue to move on. Thank you, Romella. You wouldn't mind sending me that? I'd be happy to share that with the mayor, city manager, and the rest of my colleagues on the council to know that all the great work that you all are doing. So thank you all. Right, next item is matters from staff. No items tonight? Okay. We'll go to move on to the next item, matters from the committee. Any committee members have any items? Right. Member Bo.
Mr. Chair, just one thing. I've been asked by the head of the county's Open Land and Trails Advisory Committee, COLTPAC, if I would help them in their subcommittee to put an e-bike ordinance together. But instead, I recommended that perhaps Yolanda and Cal, since they did all the work on our e-bike ordinance, could participate. So I am going to, I spoke to them just before the meeting, and they have agreed to do that. So I'm going to send their contact information to him so that they can participate in their meetings as they help to as they draft an ordinance. Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Arbo, I assume you sent them the city ordinance as approved?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I did. Thanks.
I guess we could start there and ask if there was any concerns. I agree it's needed to be done because some of our trails cross the boundaries and you can't have two sets of rules or people are going to get wound around the axle.
Thank you. Any other? Member Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just actually going back to subcommittee communications that we just skipped over. I just had a couple of things. One is the Promotion, Education, and Programming Committee is overhauling the webpage for BPAC. And we'll be communicating about that. And we're working with Michaela at the city on that. And I was just wondering if we have the ability to get certificates of appreciation for people who have been on our subcommittees and have gotten off with the city seal on it. We can acknowledge their contributions.
Yeah, that's something we can definitely work on.
Thank you.
Sure. And I apologize for skipping that over. I think meeting till 1 o'clock last night is finally getting to me. I was full force and now it's just starting to hit me like a ton of bricks. So thank you for that update. Definitely want to give the opportunity for the Policy Planning and Law Subcommittee. Any updates on your end? That would be Member Eisenstein.
It's catching. Just two quick things. At the next meeting, I'll have an update on the land development code rewrite. And then also we need to review the strategic plan. And so I'll have that as well. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Last, definitely not least, is the technical review subcommittee. Member Painter.
I can tell you the subcommittee this past week wrapped up our review, 60% plans for what? For Bishop's Lodge Road construction. And I appreciate everybody's input on that. We have another one coming up, Paseo del Sol extension, which will be getting started on here real soon. I'll send out a notice to all the committee members and try to get everybody's comments in, hopefully people in the subcommittee within the next week or two, or whatever. I don't remember what the dates are, but we'll get it.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to circle back now to any other matters from the committee. Member Spencer?
Chair, I want to thank you for your work on this committee. In case you aren't back next year, I hope you are. It's been a real pleasure to have you as our chair.
Thank you.
And also want to thank the support staff for doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And we did request to be reappointed, so I hope that is the case. Any other comments from the committee? Matters from the chair. The next meeting is January 11th. I hope I will be with you all then. No reason to belabor the moment. It's been a long and tiring meeting. Everybody get home, get safe. The roads are probably dry and maybe a little icy. And we'll see you all in 2024. Have a good night, everybody.